Chaim. The rules are you can only drink water? Huh? Okay. So I don't know how much time we have here. I don't know, 6 o'clock is a strange time for Fabrengen, but usually starts a little later at night. But you're all from, I guess, Argentina, that's where you're learning? And you're all from where you're originally from?
Everywhere.
Everywhere in the world?
Yeah.
Most United States.
Venezuela.
South Africa we have.
Okay, so let me share a few thoughts, and I'll be happy to answer questions as well afterwards. But let me begin with, since it's Gimmel Tammuz coming Shabbos, and all of you, I guess, were born after Tafshin and Dal, right? Yeah, so you never saw the Rebbe, Begashmis, and you know, this day called Gimmel Tammuz, the day, that's how we use the word Gimmel Tammuz, whatever that means. I thought it's appropriate to start with that because you could talk about a lot of Inyanim and Chassidus, but if you don't talk about the main thing, which is the Rebbe himself, the Rebbeim, they gave us the Chassidus. And I think the first Klotzkash, or maybe the most obvious question is, and I apologize if none of you have ever asked this question, but I think it should be asked, and that is, you know, what's the role of a Rebbe today? It's one thing when you can see a Rebbe Begashmis, and Sham Beguf, and you can relate to him, you can go into Yechidus, you can hear a Maimer, you can hear a Sikha, you can daven with him, or you can dance with him Simchas Torah, and so on, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. But what's the role of a Rebbe today? And as I said, maybe you're all Kabbalah Selniks and you never asked this question. And but the fact of the matter is, as you probably all learned, that with the Kabbalah Sel alone, you end up, you could be very much mechanical Jew, as they call it. It's called Mitzvah Sanosh Mulmad. You just do it by culture, because that's what you grew up with. And when I was teaching in Beis Rivka, I also taught Bachrim. So one of the questions I always asked was the first question I would always ask is, so why are you a frum Bacher today? Are you a Chassidish Bacher because that's what you grew up with? Is it a cultural thing or is it by choice? And if you had a choice, what would you choose? So most people are very uncomfortable with the question because some say, 1 second, it's emes lamite, 100%. But let's be honest, you all grew up in it in your homes. And like everybody in this world, there's 7 billion people. Every culture, every community has its customs. So why is yours different? You know, you were taught, what you were taught is the truth. I'm not saying it's not, but how do you respond when someone asks you a skeptical question like that? So there's one thing when you're 5 years old and you're listening to your parents taught you, and you make the brachas and you daven and you do everything that you're trained to do. But then when you become somewhat of an adult, and I guess you're all turning into adults if you haven't yet, you start thinking and you wonder how much of this is taught to you and how much of it is that you own, so to speak, that's your thing. When language of Chassidus, is it makiv dik or is it primiz dik? So I thought that all this is appropriate to address, especially in context of Gimmel Tammuz. And at the end of the day, you know, we talk about making Chassidus practical. Is that someone's phone? What is that?
It's the bell.
Oh, it's the bell? Is it? Making Chassidus practical at the end of the day means that just like you're eating potato chips now, or just like when you wake up in the morning, your body's hungry and you eat, or you do other things, Chassidus should be as necessary and as relevant to you as everything else that you do. When I was teaching Tanya years ago, so Tanya, of course, the Alter Rebbe writes on the Sharblat that it's miused on the pasuk Karev Elecha Dover Meid Beficha B'Vav Chalasese Echshu Karev Meid Levayir Echshu Karev Meid V'Derech Haruch K'Tzar V'Zeh Hashem Yizbach. Right. So the word Karev is an interesting word. Most people translate Karev. How would you translate Karev? Close, right? Close. But the word close, what does that mean, close? I mean, this bottle of water is close to me. Is that what it means? So I wrote to the Rebbe, and since I was working on the Sikhs and I had access and able to ask the Rebbe questions. So I wrote to the Rebbe and asked the Rebbe if you could translate karev as relevant. Because, you could have a Torah right near you and it's not relevant to you. And you could have a Torah that's 1,000 miles away and it's very relevant to you. Just like with human beings. You could sit near somebody, Gashmis, and hate that person. You could be millions of miles away from somebody and love that person and be close to them. So closeness doesn't mean Begashmis, obviously. It means that you have a relevance, that it's relevant to you. And the Rebbe circled and made a check and said yes. Most people are not aware. I've shared this with a few people because the whole Tanya is based on that. And once you define the word relevant, it's very different than when you say close. Relevant means there are things that are relevant to us. For example, you need to eat and drink. That's relevant to you because it's life and death. If you don't eat and drink, you're not going to live. Oxygen is relevant. Everything else, Gashmis, is relevant to us. The question is whether Ruchnis can be as relevant as Gashmis is. That's the big question. That's really what Chassidus is all about. Now you can learn Chassidus like you learn any type of sugya, like Gemara, or for that matter, lahavdil, mathematics, or any science. And it's a nice chokhmah. It's a lot of wisdom there, and it's logical, and it makes sense, but it doesn't have to be relevant. There was a philosopher, his name was, I have to know what his name was, but his name was Bertrand Russell, and he once was behaving in an unethical way, and he was a professor of ethics. So the school, faculty, called him in of the university, and they said to him, how could you behave in ways that are contrary to how what you teach? So he said, I also teach mathematics, and I'm not a triangle. You know what a triangle is, right? It means I could teach something, you don't have to be it. This is a yesod in general wisdom, that you can teach something, you don't have to be what you teach, you're teaching the wisdom of it. That means that's absolutely not relevant. If you contrast that, for example, with the Rambam, and the Rambam says, Chochem Nikr in Hilchos Deis, Perek Hey, the famous one that Rebbe brings it very often, that when you want to know who's a Chochem, so most people would think you go look into how smart the person is, or how many books they've written, or how good they can explain something. That's a Chochem. And the Rambam says, no, Chochem is Nikr in what? In how he eats, and how he drinks, and how he walks, and talks, and does small things. Little things. Because in Yiddishkeit, that concept that you are not what you teach, or you teach what you're not who you are, is not acceptable. It doesn't mean we're perfect human beings, but it means it has to be personally relevant. That what's called in Chassidus the cheder, the mitzias of a person, has to penetrate and affect you in a real way. So when someone asks a question, and I'm sure you learn my modern Chassidus, you learn about Atzmus, about Ein Sof, about Mamal Kalam, Sevav Kalam, Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiya, Sfiris. Right? You've heard these terms, Kav, Tzimtzum. And someone asks you a question, a Klotz Kasha, tell me, why do we need to know these things? How's my life different if I wouldn't know all these levels? If there was no Atzilus, how would life be different? I assure you that most Bachim don't have an answer to this question. Now, we have answers to each other. You start saying, you can bring up beer from Chassidus and this, but if you had to say it in simple English, where someone doesn't have any hagdomas and doesn't have the language that you have, that you're used to, that you speak to each other, if you can't explain this to someone from the street, it means you don't really understand it. And I'm not trying to be harsh, it's just a fact. Because anything in this life, if you can't explain to someone, unless they are your brother or sister or your cousin or your classmate, it means it's good for the small group, but can you explain to someone how the world would be different if there was no Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum, for example? And unless you're able to do that, it's not practical, and it's also not relevant. It's mathematical. It's correct. You can explain Ein Sof, is Megal Elokus, and it's Mein Hamoyer, and you have all the ACs that Chassidus gives. But that still doesn't explain in simple ACs. So let's apply that same question to Chassidus in general and to the Rebbe in particular. I deal with this a lot because I have to deal with secular people. And secular people don't take anything for granted. There's no, what do you call, axioms. You've heard the expression, muskelzischen. There are things that you all grew up with. By you, it's a Dover Pasha, the Rebbe is a Rebbe. But there are a lot of people who never heard of the Rebbe, and they have no idea why the Rebbe is important. So if someone asked you a question, how would the world be different if the Rebbe never existed? How would you answer this question? Lahavdil, or I don't know if you say Lahavdil, Einstein? People can show you there'd be no computers, there'd be no nuclear energy, there'd be no mobile phones. So there's a very clear, tangible thing that a man called Einstein, he was a Jew, how he changed the world. Tell me equivalent of what the Rebbe did to change the world. You know? And I'm sure you'll all say, there's so much that he did, so many Chabad houses they changed. Yeah, but how did it change the world in a way that a normal, average, simple person could say, my life has been changed by the Rebbe? Yeah, of course there are individuals that were changed. They became Baal Tshuva, they maybe were saved, and maybe there was a miracle, maybe their health, and so on. But these are individuals. You're talking about people you can count on your hand. Even if you count a few thousand, we're talking about 7 billion people on this planet. So until you ask these questions in a real way, it's very hard to really find answers that are really legitimate, because what you're then doing is just saying things that are good for the same group. Of course Lubavitchers believe what Lubavitchers believe. That's what people do. Every group believes what their system teaches them. But when you have to present it in ways that are outside of the group, so to speak, that's a whole different story. And so I want to talk about that as well. But let me begin with Gimmel Tammuz itself. And of course it's a question, what exactly is this day? Not that I have full answers, but I'll just share a few thoughts that I try to base it on what the Rebbe says. Because especially in our day and age, what you need most is not innovative naya chachmas and new ideas, but you have to be able to be true to the source. You know, we have sources, we have things that were said. So there's a story of Hillel Paritcher with the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek, as you probably know, the same name as the Rebbe, and the Tzemach Tzedek's Rebbetzin, Chaim Mushka, was also the same name. In their case, all the Rabbeim, the Rebbetzins outlived the Rabbeim, meaning the Alter Rebbe passed away before the Rebbetzin of the Alter Rebbe and so on, except the Tzemach Tzedek. And of course also our Rebbe. So the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka, the Tzemach Tzedek, her stalkus was in Tafresh Chof Aleph, 5 years before the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek. When she passed away, so the Tzemach Tzedek went into what we call seclusion. Seclusion means he didn't have no more yechidus, there was no memorim, there were no public appearances, no answers. It was very similar in some ways how the Rebbe was after Chav Bei Shvat. Not to the same extent, but it was complete so-called secluded. The Tzemach Tzedek said then, a very sharp expression, he says, Ein Malka, Ein Melech b'lei matrinisa. A king can't be a king without a queen. That was what he said. Anyway, it took a time till the Chassidim finally convinced the Tzemach Tzedek. But news came after a few months, I don't know how much time passed, and Tzemach Tzedek, the word got out that Tzemach Tzedek is coming out from his room to say a Maimer Chassidus. First time in many, many months. So you could imagine it was a big simcha by the Chassidim. Everybody gathered in Lubavitch. And Bitul Paritcher, who lived in Paritch, he was already an older man by then, because as you probably know, he first came to the Alter Rebbe. He himself passed away, Tafresh Chov Dalet, which would be close to that time. And so he came, but by him, a mimer of the Tzemach Tzedek was a very precious thing. So as difficult as it was, without health, he came. And they were all waiting for the Tzemach Tzedek to come out. They waited half hour, 45 minutes, an hour and a half. Tzemach Tzedek did not come out. Hillel was very not well, as I said, and he couldn't stand any longer and wait, so he had to go out. And he would start to walk out of the room, the Gan Eden Tachten, I guess it was, where the Tzemach Tzedek was going to come out. As he was walking out, he heard two Jungelites speaking, two young guys, and what they said was so disturbing to him that it suddenly got a new revived life, and he got all excited. What they said was, he heard them say to each other, "Nu, was komentar? What could you do?" The Rebbe is in a state of, they used an expression that was not exactly respectful, that you wouldn't use on the Rebbe. And the Rebbe is in a state of depression, or moroshcheda, or withdrawn, whatever the expression exactly was, but something of that nature. So he was so bothered by what they said, he went over to them, and like I said, he got a new surge of energy, and he said to them, say it in Yiddish, then I'll translate it for those that don't know Yiddish. Everybody knows Yiddish here? Yeah? Okay, good. Because, should I speak in Yiddish?
No.
Not that well, okay. Fine. So he said to them, Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach. What's meant it? As a Rebbe is Eigen and Noz mit Amoil. A Rebbe is Alakus. Und B'shas da Helem af Alakus, da Helem af Rebbe. What he said was, how do you translate Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach? That I don't need to translate, right? Everybody knows what that means. We could translate it more edel. We could translate it a little more grub. I'm not going to go into that. That you could fill it in yourself. What he said basically was, you're idiots. I said it 3 times. Or as I said, you could say a stronger word than that. I'll leave it to your imagination. So, and he said, what do you think? A Rebbe is eyes, a nose, and a mouth? A Rebbe is alakus. And when there's a helam and alakus, there's a helam on the Rebbe. Think about these words. You know, today a lot of people use words on the Rebbe that are quite embarrassing, actually. And it became became pretty common. You know, a Rebbe is alakus, exactly that. Or if a Rebbe is not alakus, then it's not worth listening to a Rebbe. Not just a smart man, charismatic, with nice blue eyes, and even a great scholar. A Rebbe, everybody knows the story of Shmuel Munkus, when the Alter Rebbe was going to be arrested, so the Alter Rebbe had a hiding place. Today we have more details about this story because of the Rishimus of the Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe had a hiding place. So in the middle of the night, the ministers came, the soldiers came to arrest him. Alter Rebbe hid in the hiding place. And they came into the Alter Rebbe's house. They started doing a search, and they asked the Rebbetzin, where is her husband? She said she doesn't know. So the Rishima says they slapped her and they knocked out a tooth. They punched her. They knocked out a tooth. That's what it said. Okay. Then they left. The Alter Rebbe came out of the hiding place, and then a little while later they hear another knock. We're talking about the middle of the night, like 2, 3 in the morning. They hear another knock on the window. And they look and they got scared and frightened. They thought that they had come back. And then they see Shmuel Munkus is there. The Chassid Shmuel Munkus. So they open the door. The Alter Rebbe says, you also, the Kumst Banach. You also come at night, which means you also come to frighten us. Like, by night the Mazikim dominate, the destructive forces. So he said to the Alter Rebbe, I didn't know that with the Rebbe there's a night, meaning that there's something to be afraid of. And then the Alter Rebbe consulted with him. And this part of the story we always knew, but the details I just said are not all spelled out. But now in the Rishimus of the Rebbe, you have it. So the Alter Rebbe consulted and said to him, should I cooperate and allow myself to be arrested? Or should I run away, hide? And Shmuel Munkus said the famous words. What did he say? He said, Mamanavshach, which is either or, right? Eibista Rebbe, was hast du zu mir? If you're a Rebbe, what are you afraid of? Or Neib Nisht, and if you're not, so here in the Rishima, there's only 3 dots. So people don't know what the Rebbe wrote, but it's a very sharp line. I'll tell you what it says. So it wasn't printed because it was so sharp. He said, Eib Nisht, if you're not a Rebbe, so der kumt a koil in kop, which means a bullet to your head, for taking away the pleasure of Elam Hazar from so many Chassidim. This is Shmuel Munkus speaking to the Alter Rebbe, mind you. I mean, it's pretty strong words. Think that. Why? But if you think about it, obviously none of us would have the chutzpah to say something like that to the Rebbe. But Shmuel Munkus was saying the emes. If you're a Rebbe, what are you talking about? If you're not, then you don't deserve anything. I mean, how could you go and mislead a whole generation and tell them to be pravis kafi and esapche when you're not a Rebbe? Now, as I said, Shmuel Munkus clearly was a Bal Madrega in a person that was able to say that. But just clearly Shmuel Munkus must have been a night, what they call a nacht fegel, a night bird, because all the stories with him are at night. The first time he came to the Alter Rebbe was also at night. Famous story, right? He came at night, and he came to check out, and where's the Alter Rebbe? So he saw the light, one house had a light on, so he realized that's the Alter Rebbe. He knocked on the door, and the Alter Rebbe opened the door and said, who are you? He says, I'm looking for, I don't know how he identified the Alter Rebbe, I don't know, whatever the expression he used. So the Alter Rebbe said, what do you want? Come in the morning. What are you coming middle, 3 o'clock in the morning? Because the Alter Rebbe got frightened. Who is this? Never saw him before. So the Alter Rebbe started slamming the door on him, right? And he put a foot in the door, and Alter Rebbe couldn't close the door. So Alter Rebbe said, if you don't leave, I'm going to call the goy to throw you out. So he says, Rebbe, mein goy is starker for dein goy. You know, it's brought in the end of, if you look in the El Yesivitz of Tilim, the story is brought in the back there. So the Rebbe has a harder there, he adds, goy asher b'kirbecha. What do you mean, mein goy is starker? Mein nefesh abam is starker for your goy. So the Alter Rebbe realized that he's why he always comes at night, I don't really know. That's another fabringa. But it's interesting. Now, why am I telling the story? Because I go back to the Bitul story. Because the truth is, it is extreme. It's either or. Either it's elikus or it's not elikus. And there's no half elikus. You can't say that the Rebbe is emes until Tovshin Memches, and afterwards we don't really know. Chaz v'shalom. A Rebbe is a Rebbe. If the Rebbe is elikus, it's elikus throughout. And most importantly, it's also elikus today. Now, you see, I'm not saying elikah, chaz v'shalom, elikus. I want to talk about what a Rebbe is, because I think that's the real discussion here. And maybe this is a little haskaladik, but I'll try to make it also practical, because I think it's on the sod of everything is what is a Rebbe really. Because the klotz kasha is obvious. We Jews do not believe in mumutzayim. We have only one Eibishter. Rachmana litzlan, we don't have anything that's a mumutza. So what's the role of a Rebbe exactly? Including Moshe Rabbeinu for that matter. Where does it come from? You know, we have the Alef Havdolas, other religions, they have Memutzayim, they have whatever they have, Yoshke or others. I don't want to bring it in the same breath, but just asking the question. So what is this thing of a Rebbe? So I'm sure you've learned there's a difference in a Memutza Mafsik and a Memutza Mechaber. Have you learned these words? But still, even a Memutza Mechaber, why do you need a Memutza? What's the point? And we know you don't daven to the Rebbe Chaz v'Shalom, you don't daven to the Eibishter. So what exactly is a Rebbe? And I think when you answer that question properly, is that you have a whole different look at what Gimmel Tammuz is. So I'm going to quote a few sikhs here, particularly Yud Shvat Tovshin Chavov. If you want to look it up, you can look it up later. Tovshin Chav Gimmel too. Those 2 years, Tovshin Chav Gimmel and Tovshin Chavov, but mainly Tovshin Chavov. Okay. So the Rebbe spoke then, of course, Yud Shvat is the Stalkus of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And the Rebbe's main theme was about Yaakov Avinu Leimes. Which again, people throw around these words, there's sikhs on the topic. But what does it mean, Yaakov Avinu Leimes? If you're talking Ruchnius, Neshama, so it's not just Yaakov Avinu. Tzadikim, Gabim Misosam, Kruim Chaim, every tzaddik. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, everybody's Leimes, if you're talking Beruchnius. And if you're talking Begashmius, we know that Yaakov Avinu is not here Begashmius. As the Gemara asks right afterwards, it says, V'chichantu chantaya, v'kovru kovraya, v'savtu sabdaya. They buried him, they embalmed him, they eulogized him. So how could you say Leimes? So Taka doesn't say in the Pasuk Vayomos. By Yaakov, by Yitzchak it does, by Avram it doesn't. But clearly all the other things were done. He's buried. He's in Moras HaMachpelah together with Avram and Yitzchak. No one argues that. So how could you say Leimes? So clearly the Gemara means more than just Beruchnius. So the Gemara answers Mazare B'chaim, Afu B'chaim. So another klotz kash. What do you mean Mazare B'chaim? Everyone is Mazare B'chaim. And Avram's children don't make Avram come alive. And Moshe's children and all the tzaddikim from all the generations. So the truth is the Gemara is not really understood. Because if you're talking again Beruchnis or through our children, everyone has children. You don't even have to be a tzaddik. You could even say about a regular person who's not even a tzaddik. If he brought up children that are Shem Netated Mitzvahs, in many ways, Mazare B'chaim, Afu B'chaim, they live on, he lives on through them. We always say this. We say it in all our drushes. You know, that the children are continuing the legacy, the tradition of their parents, etc., etc. So the Rebbe talked about it a number of times. And in Tovshin Chavov, the Rebbe actually explained it very balabatish, you could say, very practical. And the Rebbe said the following. The Rebbe said that Metzias of a Rebbe is a very unique type of Metzias. It's a person who's dedicated his whole life, not to himself, but to serve Hashem and to serve the people. Now, you don't have really examples of that in this world. You know anybody that doesn't have a personal life, a private life, even very fine public figures. They have their public life and they have their private life. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you ever saw the note that Rebbe wrote in Hey Tavis, by the court case. So the Rebbe wrote then a short note that he said should be used in the case to make the case. What does the Rebbe write there? That the kol inyone of a Rebbe is Bitul Hayesh. He doesn't have a mitzias for himself. Now, this is when that note was written by the Rebbe, I can tell you, off the record, that even Chassidim wondered, what does that have to do with courts? A nice Chassidish concept. But how are you going to explain this in a court of law to a goyish judge, Sifton, and to goyish, people? How are you going to explain what that Rebbe is Bitul Hayesh? In this world, everybody is, even people who are public figures, have private property, which was, of course, Barry Garari's argument that the Frierdiker Rebbe is Taka Rebbe, but he has a house, which he owns, he has furniture, he has books, he has property. And when the Rebbetzin gave the answer, the famous answer, when they asked her who the Sfarim belonged to, the Rebbe or the Chassidim, what was her answer? That the Rebbe himself belongs to Chassidim. So again, it's a nice hergish. But this actually became law. This became, the court case was based all on this, that this goyish judge had the wisdom and understanding to appreciate this concept. And it's non-existent in this world. There's no one on earth that is not a private citizen. Even the President of the United States has private property. Once he's no more president, he has his belongings, he has his money, and so on. So there's no such thing as a public figure without any private life. So the Rebbe in Tafshil Chavav said almost the same thing he said for the Hey Tavis case, that a Rebbe is not a private citizen. He's a public individual whose life is completely dedicated to the cause. So the Rebbe's words are, you can look it up, I'm summarizing. So the Rebbe says, so such a person really never dies. Why? Because he's not about him. If you're talking about a private individual, then at some point his life ends. But a person who's dedicated to the cause, as long as the cause continues, he continues. And the Rebbe explained it in this fashion. So when you say, for example, in the Geras HaKedesh, it says that the Chayev Tzaddik is Chaim Ruchni, not Chaim Gashmi, right? What does that mean? He says that most of us is Chaim Psarim. Our life is flesh and blood. Someone says, what is life? What is life? A body, a soul inside of a body. You eat and drink, and you do things that let you live. A tzaddik's life is a ruchnisdik life. So, and that's why after his istalkus, the Rebbe says, because now he doesn't have the limits of the body. So the Rebbe in that Fabring Yutzvat Tavshel Chavov essentially said the following, Maskana he said. So Meli said now, so how do we know if the Rebbe lives on or not? He says only one way. If his chassidim and his shluchim continue his work, then he lives on. Ma'azari b'chaim, afu b'chaim. If not, Rachmana litzlan, he does not live on. So he says before Yud Shvat, the Rebbe decided his own destiny. Today, Kav Yochel, the Eibishter gave it in the hands of his Talmidim and his chassidim to determine whether it will be b'chaim or not. That was the gist of it. Now, you've all learned, I'm sure, the idea of Eid Ein Sof, right? The Eid Ein Sof. So there's an expression of Chassidus that Eid Ein Sof is Kodim Kekadmuse. Have any of you heard this term before? Yes or no? Okay. Now, how could you say Kodim Kekadmuse means that there's only one Kadman, there's only one Eibishter. And yet you say Eid Ein Sof is Kodim Kekadmuse, which means because it is an extension of Elikus, so it has the same power of Asmus itself. The Alter Rebbe says it basically in the Geras HaKedesh, because it's Me'in HaMoyer, so it has that power. So someone once asked the Rebbe a question, in Tafshin Yudbeis, I think it was. The whole thing, a Maimer from the Frierdiker Rebbe in Tafshin Sadik Dal, a very deep Maimer, which I'm going to go into right now. It's a whole discussion of its own. But he basically asked, how could you say such a thing? How could you say that Ruchnius has a kiyum that is Kodim Kekadmus? Everything comes from the Eibishter. Some things are spiritual, some things are physical. And the Rebbe used an expression. Listen to this expression. The Rebbe said, Bitul kenish bottle werden. You hear? Bitul kenish bottle werden. So if something is a mitzias, just like it came to being, you could also eliminate it. It has a beginning, it has an end. But something that's bittul, the more you mavatl it, the more mitzias it becomes, because it's all mitzias is bittul. That's what the Rebbe said. The Bitul kenish bottle there. And that's the answer by the Mamutza. A Rebbe is only great not because he's a great guy, not because he's smart, and not because you know Kol HaTeira Kula, and not because even he's a tzaddik, because it's Bitul. And once you bottle, you are basically an extension of what the thing you're bottled to. So that is not an inyan of a Mamutza B'chla. There's one Eibishter, and a Rebbe is so bottled to the Eibishter, so he's like Kodem Kekadmusa, like Oyer. It's not a concept that you could explain it to people if you know what Bitul means. So if a person has his own life, so then obviously your life, even if it's dedicated to Torah mitzvahs, but you're a private citizen. You're an individual. But if you're no individual there, then everything the person is just what the Eibishter will. He's just a mouthpiece, so to speak, what we call a transparent channel. Then you could say, V'aminu b'Hashem b'Moshe Avdei. As the Medrash says, the Chilta says, if you don't believe in Moshe, it's like you don't believe in the Eibishter. How could you equate a Moshe to the Eibishter? Moshe was great, the greatest man that ever lived. Right? Because there was only one, because Moshe is like Eir. And Eir Ein Sof, Bitul cannot bottle veil. So essentially the Rebbe explained in Tov Shel Chavov, and I'm using now to explain Gimmel Tammuz, that there are things that are emes. Emes does not die. There's no such thing as emes dies. I remember right after Gimmel Tammuz 22 years ago, so I was interviewed on a television station by Larry King, CNN. It was a big thing. It was mamish 2 days. Hey Tammuz Tov Shinun Dal it was. Gimmel Tammuz was Sunday, and this was Tuesday night. And he asked me a question. He said, why he understands that people are very sad that the Rebbe passed away, the way he put it. But why are they shocked? The Rebbe was 92 years old. You know, no one lives forever. Why is there shock? Sadness, he understands. It's painful. But what's the shock? And this was live television. You only have like 30 seconds to answer. And I wasn't prepared for this. So I just said what came to my mind. So I said, you have to, and I have to say it in a way also that would make sense to the audience. So I said, look, you have to remember that for us, the Rebbe is an embodiment of Torah. And the Torah withstood everything in history. The Holocaust, pogroms, it withstood the Inquisition, the Crusaders, all the tzaras. So when a Rebbe is connected to something that's immortal, that lasts through thousands of years, and then something mortal touches that's more than just sad, it's shocking. And he received it all right. And also the other people that were there, they had someone sitting near me who was like an anti. And he didn't say anything. Later he told me, I'm not going to come out. You put it in such a way, I can't really go rebut that. But bottom line is that there's ways to explain this idea because we're not talking about Gashmis here. We're talking about Ruchnis. So the truth is, it's really the other way around. Even those of us that saw the Rebbe Neshama B'Guf, with what we see, was the goof of the Rebbe, that was the Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe says it's Chaim Ruchnim, even on a Shalom Beguf. We look with fleshik egin, you look with fleshy eyes, so you see flesh. Like the story with the Razah and the Alter and the Rebbe Rashab. When a Jew is fire touches fire, it doesn't get burned. If you look with Gashmisdik eyes, you see Gashmis. So the truth is that we didn't really see what a Rebbe is. We saw what we see with our own eyes. It's a nitzchizdik thing because it's not about an individual. I want to share with you three sichas, very interesting sichas that the Rebbe more or less said this in his own Asis. Purim Tov Shemem Gimmel and Yudalf Nisim Mem Hey and Yudalf Nisim Lametes. The Rebbe said like this: Purim Mem Gimmel. The Rebbe was in the middle of Fabrengen, and it's on tape. You could hear it. The Rebbe says from side to side, from time to time, Bet Niseder comes. One can have a question. The Rebbe's talking about himself. And later in the Sikha, it's clear the question was, why is he matriach and causing people to come to hear the Rebbe come to Spabreng? Everybody can sit home and learn Chassidus and Nigla. Why are they all coming to hear one person speak? The Rebbe said, so from side to side, from time to time, a question like that arises. The Rebbe said, what do you do when you have a question? You ask your Rebbe. So the Rebbe said, Ashgocha Pratis, or something like that. I remember the exact Lashon. That there's a story with the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was once at home, and he was there with his Rebbetzin. He looked out the window, and he saw Chassidim coming. And he said to the Rebbetzin, he says, "Was willen sie von mir? What do they want from me?" And he was about to lock the door and close the windows. The Rebbe said these words. The Rebbetzin saw that she better say something to have a good ending here. So she told the Alter Rebbe, "Sie willen hören, was euer Rebbe hat zu sagen." They want to hear what your Rebbe has to say. Had she said they want to hear what you have to say, he would have not let them in. But she said the right line. They want to hear what your Rebbe has to say. So the Alter Rebbe said, "Eba zei, if that's the case, will ich sagen und sagen." I'll say and say. So the Rebbe continued. He says, the Alter Rebbe said it mitzad anivus. Mitzad humility. The Rebbe didn't want to say about himself the same thing, so he said it mitzad humility. The same Alter Rebbe writes also that Tanya is mipi sofrim, mipi sefrim, as if the Alter Rebbe just collected a few thoughts from other teachers. The Rebbe said that therefore, because Hashgacha Pratis is that he had the schus to hear from the Frierdiker Rebbe and to work on the publishing and so on, that's why people can come hear the Rebbe by Fabring. This is the Rebbe speaking not in Tafshin Yud or Yud Aleph, in Tafshin Mem Gimel. So you can see here, besides the ultimate Bitul of the Rebbe, to speak this way, you also see the Rebbe's emes. He's telling a story, and the Alter Rebbe said the same thing. They're not coming to tell you what they have to say, they're coming to tell you what those that are before them, because they see themselves as Bitul. Then there's Yud Aleph Nisim Mem Hey. 2 years later, was a televised Fabring. This I remember was very dramatic, because there was television, there was a packed shul. Purim and the Rebbe never allowed to be televised. But Yud Aleph Nisim Mem Hey was televised. And the Rebbe begins the Fabring in the most odd way. He says that Sidur Reishis Goyim Amalek, it's known in Chassidus that the worst thing is Gaiva, Yeshus. And here, everybody's come together to celebrate the birthday of a certain individual. Of course, Yud Aleph Nisim is talking about himself. So, wie kommt das Azach? I remember I was listening to this, the Rebbe speaking on television, obviously the Rebbe speaking Yiddish, but it was being translated. And the Rebbe felt it necessary to broadcast this to the whole world. He's asking a question, why is everybody coming to celebrate the birthday of an individual? Doesn't that like arrogant? None of us feel that way, but the Rebbe asked that question. And you know what the Rebbe answered? The Rebbe told a story that there was once a Rav in a town, a big town, a Choshev town, and the Rebbe, the Rav was a very special Rav, but he had one problem. The Rebbe said he was given a kurziker. He was very short, physically short. So one of the people from the town came to him and said to him, with all due respect, you're a good man, you're a great rabbi, but it's embarrassing for a town like ours to have such a short rabbi. You're so short, the Gashmis, basically no one could see you. So the Rebbe said, he answered, the mensch is efshar kleininke, or nashmolinke. The person may be small and tiny, but the benkel is aggressive. But the chair which he fills, the position he fills, is a big one. And the Rebbe continued and said, that the Fabringen is not because of a birthday of an individual, but it's the individual who represents the benkel, the movement. And that's what people are celebrating. I'm just giving it to you briefly. Here, 2 examples among hundreds how the Rebbe's, and I saw this with my own eyes many, many times, as much as people worship the Rebbe, so to speak, and consider the Rebbe never even referred to himself as a Rebbe. There's always the Rebbe the Shver. However you type pshat in that. And I don't think it's just like with the Alter Rebbe, because the Rabbeim did not see themselves. Oyer does not see itself as a Metzias. It sees itself as a Hemshech of Elikus. And that's why it's not Tefer Smokim in its own eyes. Now, could such a thing be destroyed? How could you kill something that's bottled? As I said, the more bottled it is, the more Metzias it is. So that's just a simple way of explaining what a Rebbe is and how it's relevant to ourselves. So, of course, everyone will ask the question, but one second. So what are you telling us? That we don't have to have a neshama b'guf? So why would the Rabbeim here on this earth? If they were just completely, if it's just fine as it is. Obviously not. We know that the ultimate schar is chis hamesim. We know the ultimate reward is neshamas b'gufim. We want to be able to see a Rebbe. We want to be able to fabring in a physical way on our terms. But my point I want to make is that even if you don't have that right now, the Gashmis, there's no kihu zeh, there's no difference beruchni is 1 iota. Exactly like Shmuel Munke said. And I say it because I think it is memonivshach. If a person has such questions, then I have no problem. For example, somebody tells me, and people tell me this off the record, they say it anonymously. Not everybody wants to say it, they're embarrassed to say it. Some people say, I don't know, I think maybe things changed. The Rebbe was a Rebbe then. He said things about Moshiach then, but now it's a new world. 22 years later. It's 24 years since the Rebbe spoke at a Fabrengen. It's a different world, a quarter century later. Maybe it was a Eis Rotz and then things changed. Now, a person like that, I say clearly to, I said, one second, what do you mean changed? So maybe things changed in 1960 or 1970. If you start making changes, how you decide when it changed, when it doesn't change. Someone who says, I don't believe in a Rebbe, Rachmana litzlan, altogether, I don't believe in God, fine, that's a different argument. But there, at least the guy doesn't believe so there's nothing to talk about. But to say you're going to believe in something and follow it, and then decide that at some point, the nitzchis of it changes, Chassidus explains either it's nitzchi or it's not nitzchi. Either it's emes or not emes. If it's one drop not emes, the whole thing is not emes. And I think it's very vital to understand this. And the point here is it's not about an individual. We're talking about a movement. That's why a Rebbe without Chassidus doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a Rebbe without Chassidus. A Rebbe is Chassidus. So when the Rebbetzin said the Rebbe balainz Chassidim, she was saying exactly accurately what it is. A Rebbe is not a Metzias B'chlal. His whole Metzias is Teda. His Metzias is Chassidus. His Metzias is the service, that the Eved Hashem, and the service that he serves the people that he serves, which is Chassidim. So when you think of it in that way, it takes on, frankly, a whole different type of significance. That's why I don't see how a person can be a chassid today without complete connection to the Rebbe's teaching, Heiros and Teres. Because a picture of the Rebbe on the wall is a nice thing, but that's just a symbol. If a person sees the Rebbe in that way, then you could say very clearly, it's a picture. I have a picture of my grandfather on the wall too. I have a picture of people that lived 100 years ago too. The only thing that lives on that we can relate to is the Rebbe's directives and Heiros. And that has not changed in one drop. Every Hira is there, every Teda is there. As the Rebbe said in Tov Chavov, that Adrabah, today, the stakes are higher, because today, Kav Yochel, we are the arms and legs and the mouthpiece of the Rebbe. As simple as that. And if we don't do it, no one's going to do it. So, I'm not trying to persuade or convince anybody here, but I will tell you this, like in any army with soldiers, you can't say I'm a soldier one day and the next day I'm not in the mood. It doesn't work that way. Either you're a soldier or you're not a soldier. And everybody in their life has to make a decision at some point. Am I in or I'm not in? You're Bochrim now, you're in Yeshiva, you're Kavyochel, Teirose, Menose, completely submerged in Teda and Chassidus, one would assume. But even if you're not physically, but that's what you should be doing, I'm not talking now, but above all, you are now being trained as soldiers. And at the end of the day, without soldiers today, there is no Rebbe, to be very honest. Because the Rebbe will disappear, because the Rebbe's Gashmizdika presence is not there. So his only Gashmizdika presence is us. That's what the Rebbe said in Tav Shechavov. So now it's in our hands. And I think it's both a great schutz and merit, but it's also a great responsibility. So that's what I wanted to just open up as we talk about Gimmel Tammuz. I think it's vital to understand that Gimmel Tammuz, I'm not going to discuss now what happened 22 years ago. I'm not the Eibishter. I don't know the plan. I don't have answers. I just also don't know why a Holocaust happened and why the Tzimtzum Arishan happened. It happened. But what we do know is that it's Tzimtzum B'Shvil HaGilui. There's no such thing as just concealment. Everything is for a positive purpose. There's no question about that. The first lesson the Rebbe taught us is there's no such thing as a negative without a positive. So even if something may seem like negative, for right now it seems that way. But it's not the whole picture. So from my point of view, Gimmel Tammuz is a day we have to make a decision. Like Shmuel Munker said, other. Now, God forbid, I'm not going to speak the other option. To me, there's only one option. But choices have to be made. And you have the opportunity right now in your life. You're not in the work world. You're not yet thrown into the world and have to make panos and so on. Thank God. So you have now this is the time where you make these decisions. And I can tell you on a personal note, for me, I had my Gimmel Tammuz moment already a long time ago, long before Gimmel Tammuz. I was a 21-year-old bacher in 770, Tavshel Lamed Ches, when the Rebbe had a heart attack. Simchas Teda, Shminat Tzeres by night. And it was a serious heart attack, today we know, what the doctor called a killer heart attack. And I remember, even though those days, it was completely taboo, you didn't speak about these things, But I remember, Chatose Ani Masket, I thought about what happens if the Eibishter decides to take the Rebbe. And obviously I didn't say this to anybody, because it was like completely not allowed to say something like that. You didn't even think like that. And I thought about it. I said, so what happens? You know, the Rebbe is leading us all. People are going on shlichus. They're changing their lives. They're dedicating their lives. I was working then in the sichus. I'd committed my life to this. And then, interestingly, I came across the story of Shmuel Munkes that I mentioned before. That's why I know the story so well, because I read it then very closely. And I remember the story changed my life, to be very honest, because I understood from the story, you know something? You got to grow up and be an adult. You have to make a decision. You may not have proof or no, but you have to make a decision. You're in or you're not in. That was the story for me. That's a mamonavshach. The Rebbe's a Rebbe. You may not always understand how it works. You know? And so for me, when Gimmel Tammuz came, even though all of us, as I said, were shocked, and all of us were pained until this day, it's sad. But I was not, did not shake me one drop, because I already made my decision on Tov Shalom Ches. I said, you're in for life. Either this is Emes Lamite or it's not Emes Lamite. If it's not Emes Lamite, get out. No, you can't say, I'm only in when it's comfortable. You know? It doesn't work that way. You're in for a lifetime thing. I saw too many people who made decisions. When it's comfortable for me, I'm in. When it's not so comfortable, I have other things to do. That to me is very, what can I say, very false. Because like I said before, a soldier, when the war is going well and everybody's winning, I'm in. But you know what? We have one setback and the enemy shoots back at us. I'm out of here. I have other things to do. You can tell me yourself, where's the loyalty? You know, there's a thing called loyalty. Imagine having a friend. He's with you when everything is going well. One time you're challenged and someone criticizes you. He says, I don't know you. You know, unfortunately we have friends like that. That kavyachol friends. That they're good for you, they're good when everything is going well. But as soon as something's not exactly, will they support you too? Will they be there with you? Will they fight with you? Or they'll only be there when everything is going positively. And to me that was a decision I made then, and I think it's a decision everybody has to make at some point. Now, as I said, Gimmel Tammuz is definitely a challenging day. But it comes down to one thing. Today, there's only one, before Gimmel Tammuz, I can tell you, a personal witness, I could say, there was also Yetzer Haras. I'm sure you know that before Gimmel Tammuz, people also had a Yetzer Hara. And they weren't tzaddikim. And there was machlekes, and there was other things too. The Rebbe was right there. You could say, how could it possibly be by Fabrengen? The Rebbe is there. And people are talking in the middle of Fabrengen? Yeah. You know why? You take for granted things you have. There was also once a Beis HaMikdash, and Eden had sinas chinim, and the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. How do you like that? As sad as it is. So we had a Rebbe, we have a Rebbe, and it was a very it's beautiful to see, but you take for granted. Trust me, you take it for granted. Every day you see the Rebbe, it's hard to imagine because you never saw it, so for you it's like if the Rebbe was here. I mean, it would be like the biggest guilt. But every day, you know, tainuk to me, day in a tainuk. So it starts getting accustomed. Why am I saying it? Because so then, be honest, you couldn't know who a real chassid was before Gimmel Tammuz. You know why? Because the Rebbe was a very charismatic figure. And when the Rebbe danced Simchas Torah, 10,000 people were dancing. Why not? It's very easy. It's a big party. Everyone loves parties. You know, when a big light is shining in a room, right? You don't see the cracks in the wall. But when the light suddenly is dimmed, at least to our eyes, then suddenly you see the cracks. I could say today, and I'm not trying to explain Gimmel Tammuz, but I'm trying to say is today is the real test. Who a real chassid and a real soldier is today. When everything was going beautiful before then yeah, there were a lot of nice people. Today is the real test. And in some ways, this is real emes. So when the Rebbe said, Chav Ches Nissen, I did everything I can do and now it's up to you, now we're in that situation. Now begoli, I'm not talking about behind the scenes. The Rebbe still works his ways, and we're still just, if we're smart, we understand it's not keich v'eitzim yadi. But begoli, today we make real choices. You know, when the commander-in-chief is sitting at the table with you,
Yes, you don't want
no, fine. Then I could say real l'chaim, yeah. When the commander-in-chief, someone that ever sitting with you at the table, then obviously you have to be an idiot to go and say, no, I don't want to do the job. Even then there were people that said that, for the record. But when the Rebbe's Gashmi is not at the table, no one's watching. You know, Rebbe ben Zakkai, which was many generations ago, said to his Talmidim before he passed away, you know what he said? Halavai, Shiyeh Meira Shemayim, Shiyeh Alecha Meira Shemayim, Kemeira Basar V'dam. Halavai, you should have Yireh Shemayim as much as you have fear of other people. This is Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai to Tanoim in his time. So you can imagine how much more today. Yes, of course, if someone's watching you, what's the kunz that you're behaving? What happens when someone's not watching? What you do in your own privacy. That's where you see the real test. So I actually see this period of time, and maybe this is the kavan elyena. The Rebbe said, "Aveda b'kayach atzmei." The real kayach atzmei is right now, because you don't have the nefesh habamis does not see the Rebbe looking at you. Yes, the Eibush is looking at us. The Rebbe is also looking at us, but you don't have the meira basar v'dam. So now is the real test, and that's why when I see, I see bachrim that are learning and are dedicated. It's to me that's the bottom line. That's what it comes down to. Unfortunately, you have both sides, and choices have to be made. But Gimmel Tammuz is a day to be mechazik that, and at the end of the day, today is atzmiz times. There's nothing to talk about. The giluyim are not there. What we have, the giluyim that we do have. I don't even want to talk about our leader, quote unquote leaders, without mentioning names. I don't want to get into a lashon hara department, but we don't have much giluyim. Yeah, we have the giluyim of the rabbeim and with the chassidus and Torah, but today is a real test, because I see people who today are committed. It's very real. It's not based on chitzeni. It's not based on makifim. I told you then, my good old days, 40 years ago. It was a lot based on, because the Rebbe was there, so it was a fun thing, so to speak. Today it's not fun. Today it's a matter of making a real choice. So l'chaim to you all. We'll make a hefsek. We'll sing a nigun. I'll continue. L'chaim, that you should use these precious years that you have, and this year we should be zeicha that we don't have to even talk about Gimmel Tammuz, and we should have the Rebbe with us. But in case Chaz v'Shalom, as the Rebbe always says, "Hal tzachap nacha minut," it still takes another minute. We have a real, a great choice to make. I would say, a great gift to be able to be soldiers in this army. And if you really want another sikha that'll shake you a bit, read Shmini Tovshin Chai. L'chaim. So let's sing a nice Chiddush Nigun. You guys know some songs. Who's the menagan? Who's the menagan and the kfutz? Huh?
What do you want, slow?
Slow, fast. Let's start slow.
Stop, slow one.
It's fine, I just want to get a copy. Give me your email. Give me your email.
So, maybe it's obvious, but I'll spell it out anyway. So there you have, if you have to explain, I said, ask questions before, Eid Ein Sof, Lifnei Tzimtzum, why is negated to know this? It's negated to know, because Eid Ein Sof, Lifnei Tzimtzum, if you strip it from the words, is really giving us a taste, an example of utter Bitul. What does it say? It says that Eid, before the Tzimtzum, is Mamala Kol HaMetzias, and it's completely bottled Elokus. In simple English, it means that when we dedicate our lives to something completely, like I said, you're a soldier all the way, that's a dugma of Eid Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum. After the Tzimtzum, Eid already goes through its diminishments, and its halomis, and its ishtalshalus. But before the Tzimtzum, it's completely connected and bottled. So it's like, so if someone says, you can explain this to anybody. Like, what are you dedicated to in your life? So most people in this world, they're dedicated to making money, to their own yeshus and kovid, to taivas, to everything that's temporary, everything that dies. And as a bocher, a Lubavitcher, Chassidish bocher could say, I'm dedicated to eternity. I'm dedicated to something that doesn't die, to a cause that's been here for thousands of years and will continue to be here. You know, that's unbelievable. Because most people would be shocked to say, everybody wants to be connected to something that's forever. So just a very practical, simple way to explain dargis like Eid Ein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum is from the deepest sugis and chassidus. No one was ever there before the Tzimtzum, or else we wouldn't have a need a Tzimtzum, obviously. But yet we're taught it, we teach about it, we learn about it. because there's some me'ain, some taste of it that we could have in our lives. You know? And I'm saying it because besides what I said earlier, it's also a way of explaining Chassidus in practical terms. And the truth is like this, when it says that Moshiach comes, will be v'niglu k'ved Hashem v'ro kol basar yachtov, as the Rebbe emphasizes, v'ro kol basar, not ene basar, v'ro kol basar. Flesh itself, meaning the flesh right here, sitting here, this body, your body, my body, will perceive Elokus. And we told him, "B'sari erz elokah," for my flesh I behold God. And one of the big chidushim of Chassidus Chabad is the Alter Rebbe was malbish and dressed everything up in examples from the flesh. We have examples from our meichin and from our midas and from our physical human being. Everything is a moshel for Chassidus. But as you probably have learned, a moshel in Chassidus is not just an example. A moshel is nishtalshel from the nimshel. So our flesh is actually B'Tselem Elokim. We were created B'Tselem Elokim. It's not just a moshel for Elokus, it's a tselem. It's Elokus as it manifests in this Elam Hazeh. So just to give an example, if someone cries, you see tears coming out of their eyes. Would anyone say that first you have tears in your eyes, then you feel sad? Of course not. First you feel sad, and then you cry. Now, sadness, however, doesn't look like anything. Can you tell if someone isn't crying or they don't have a sad face, how could you know if someone's sad? What does sadness look like? It doesn't have a look because it's an emotion, it's a feeling. You could say, L'fi erech, Elam Hazeh, sadness is a ruchnisdik thing. But the Eibishter made the world in a way where everything has an eid and a keli. So the ruchnius of sadness is the sadness, the gashmius of sadness, the keli is the tears. So everything in this world is really a keli for something else. So when you see, for example, water, you make a bracha on water, it's a nice blessing, water. But we learned that water is nishtalshel from chesed. Mayim comes from chesed. Now, but chesed doesn't look like water. You so were able to see chesed, it doesn't look like water. But water is the gashmis, like the levush of chesed. And the same thing is gvura and fire. Fire we can see. So fire is not just a moshel for gvura. Fire is gvura. In Elam Hazeh, it manifests in what's called fire. Now you're able to see the whole world this way, every detail in the world, which what we call hashgacha pratis. Then you start saying that's Elokus. If you're able to look at fire and say fire, the whole union of fire is simply to be an expression of gvura of the Eibishter, you're dealing then seeing like keach hapel benifel, so to speak. So it's not such a crazy thing to be able to think of it that way. I don't know if you ever saw this Igris from the Rebbe, Egeris from the Rebbe, just a very interesting Egeris. Because I want to talk about something, very practical. We're talking about what are we supposed to do. Before I was talking about being in the army. Okay, so now what is this army supposed to do? So let's talk about that a little practically. So I want to share this letter. The Rebbe writes in the letter, there's a letter to a guy who owned a laundromat. You know what a laundromat is? A place you bring your laundry to. Now, it doesn't get more mundane than that, right? You're bringing dirty, soiled, wrinkled laundry. Some of it may even be stained with the last time you puked from l'chaim, right? And you bring it to a laundromat. So what can be anything deeper than that? And the Rebbe writes a letter. It's printed, I think, in maybe Igris Kedush Chelik Taz. I'm not sure what volume. Tazayin, I think. Or maybe it's the year Tazayin, I don't remember. But it's not cool for that period in time. And the Rebbe says, since everything's Hashgacha Pratis, so even the fact that you were on a laundromat has also a lesson in life. Okay? And what does he say? So he goes on and says, what's a laundromat? You buy new clothing, you wear it once, twice, 3 times, a few times. At some point it gets soiled, it gets dirty, it gets wrinkled. So you'd think after some point you'd have to throw it out. No, comes the chiddush of a laundromat, that you bring the laundry to the cleaners, and the cleaner takes the clothing, puts it into a washing machine, into water, not just regular water, warm water, mixes it with chemicals, and the chemicals get rid of the stains and the deeper stains in the clothing. Then you take it out, and you put it under a very heavy press, right? You press it, voila, you have like a new garment. And you can do this process many times in the lifetime of a garment. The Rebbe says, what's the hira? The Rebbe says, is that neshama shenasata bi tahiri. Every neshama is like a clean garment, tahira. And we get it pure. But then life soils, wrinkles, and makes stains on our neshama. The different things that happen in our lives. So you could think at some point, okay, too late. You've already made mistakes. You did things that were wrong. So your neshama now is no longer teherehi. Comes the laundry, we learn from laundry, no. You put the neshama into water, ein mayim elateira. And not just cold water, which is kalkite, but warm water, vadamkite. Warmth. Avos Yisrael, passion, warmth. And then you mix different chemicals. And different chemicals is different mitzvahs. Film, mezuzah, kashrus, and so on. And then you take it out and you put it under the heavy press called Kabbalah's oil, and you have a fresh garment, neshama tahiri. It's a letter from the Rebbe. Why is it such a powerful letter in my mind? Because everybody talks about Moshiach, Geula, right? The Rebbe made it very clear that the shlichus of our generation is Moshiach. There's no two ways about it. I don't care what the debate's going on out there and the mechlekas that's going on, but no one can deny that in Bosel Gani Tovshin Yud Aleph, the Maimer, the Rebbe makes it clear, this is the Deir Hashvi. The Rebbe says clearly, Nish mitun ze bchira, Nish mitun ze aveda. It's not because we chose it, not because we earned it. We are the number 7 generation. The generation, the Rebbe says, will be the last generation in Golis, the first generation in Geula. This goes back to Tovshin Yud Aleph. We're not talking Tovshin Nun, we're not talking Tovshin Memches, Tovshin Yud Aleph. And the Rebbe's whole approach of all the Nesiyas was toward that end, to finish the last sparks, to finish the last steps of Yefutza Man Secha Chutza, which Moshiach told the Baal Shem Tov, Osimar Damalka Mashiach. Then in the late Men's, if you look at the Rebbe's Nesiyas actually, you could see there was an orderly progression that B'shaite, maybe we didn't pick it up. When you look back, it was very clear to say that I've talked about this a number of times. The Rebbe has a famous sikha where he explains that the 30 years of the Frierdiker Rebbe's leadership was Tafresh Pei till Tafshin Yud. That each tkufa, each 10 years, was another tkufa. The Rebbe paskin on the Frierdiker Rebbe, you could have paskin the same thing on the Rebbe. You could see from Tafshin Yud till Tafshin Chof was really starting to build the Mozdus. The yeshiva system, Tzach, the Sheikh Chabad, etc. In Tovshin, Yud-Beis Tammuz, Tovshin Chai, and then started strongly in Tovshin Chof, which was 200 years with the Baal Shem Tov's Histalkus. The Rebbe started Ufaratzta. See, and the Rebbe talked very strongly about Ufaratzta. Then began the first Chabad houses, the first shlichim. And that was the 1960 to 1970, was primarily the beginnings of shlichus. 1970 to 1980 was clearly Mivtzoyim, and then with the campaigns that started reaching out in different ways. And in Tavshin Mem, till Tavshin Nun, or till Tavshin Nun Beis, you could even say, till Tavshin Nun began, the main thing was Ummah Sa'elam, Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei. So you see a clear progression. If someone wants to talk about business strategy, it was very clear. What you do, they call in business strategy, they call it concentric circles. First you reach a small circle of people, then you widen the circle, and then you widen it more, and you widen it more. And it was very clear how the Rebbe was moving from the closer inner circle of the Mezdis, outer, until the Mems. There's hundreds of pages that the Rebbe spoke about Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei. And then the end of the Mems, Memches, Memtes, Nun, primarily, Tavshin Nun, the Rebbe started and said, now we finished Aveda Sabirudim, and now we're ready to open our eyes, Kabbalah's Pnei Mashiach. However you explain it, I can explain it, I've done many times explaining it, I don't see it as so complicated to understand, but regardless, this order that I just described is also undeniable. It's very clear. When you look back, you see clearly. Almost to the year, 10, like that. Tavshin Yud to Tavshin Chav, Chav to Lamed, Lamed to Mem, and Mem to Nun, and Nun to Nun Beis. And then the Rebbe says, Chav Ches Nis and Tavshin Nun Aleph. Ich getan alles, I did everything, now do what you can do. And at the end of that sikha, the Rebbe says, maybe there'll be 1, 2, 3 of you that will come together and to discuss what can be done, how it should be done. It's now 24 years since, 25 years since that sikha. I can tell you as a living witness, I haven't seen anything done. The Rebbe would ask for a duch. What was done in these 25 years? I would be, not be the one, I'd be embarrassed to be standing in front of the Rebbe to say what we did. And I'm not saying because I'm a negative guy. I think, yes, everybody points out that after Gimmel Tammuz, more shluchim went out than before. I'm not taking away from what we did. But regarding the Rebbe's goal, I see this, no, I don't see any hazaz in this regard. So to me, the reason this is because Moshiach is a very complicated mitzvah, to put it mildly. Mitzvah tefillin is easy. You go get a guy after bar mitzvah, you have tefillin on his hand. What's the big thing? That's all you got to do. Mezuzah, kashrus, all the mitzvahim are relatively tangible. Mitzvah Mashiach, most people ask them, what exactly is Mitzvah Mashiach? What does it entail? What's the action involved? Giving tzedakah, that's Mitzvah tzedakah. Putting on tefillin, eating kosher, keeping Shabbos. Mashiach becomes, is it ideological? Is it more of a machshava thing? Is it a hergish thing? And when you don't know exactly what exactly it is, how could you really spread it? That's why I think we have a lot of the different opinions. Some people felt the easiest thing to do is to say Yechid. At least you're doing something. Others say Yechid is just a makavdika thing. What are you doing? Just saying Yechid in 770 or in our shuls? Well, how is that changing the world exactly? And I'm not getting now into arguments whether it's marachik or makar. My point is, so the Rebbe said, the derech yeshara is lilmed inyan gula Mashiach. And it's very, very clear that he said, and to live with that. So what does that mean? That means the following. Without understanding Chassidus, without making Chassidus practical in our lives, we cannot have a b'chlal, an inkling, even a hashara, what Geula is like. That's why I brought the story with the cleaners. Because to me, if you think about that, then you can apply that to everything in life. If a mundane a dry cleaner can be a mashal for chalakus, then what's not a mashal? So really, it's our job is to sit here, sit at the table. This table is a dugma, is koyach hapel benifel. There's a lakus chay, right? Mahava machayim makayim every second anew this table, and this pitcher, and these cups, and my hands, and everything here. And I'm not suggesting we're on a madrega where you could see it and live by that all the time. But I am suggesting that we are at a madrega where you could talk about it, where you can talk about it and talk about it with others. And that's what the Rebbe wanted. The Rebbe wanted, Geula will come when the Eibishter decides. But what can we do? When the Rebbe says, open our eyes, everybody, what does it mean to open our eyes? Our eyes are open already. So the Rebbe once told Zalman Gadadi that some people sleep by my Fabrengens with their eyes closed, and most sleep with their eyes open. And what does that mean? Because you could have your eyes open and also be asleep, right? Anayim lahem lo yuru. You could be sitting right now with your eyes open, your ears open, and you see and hear what you want to see and hear. So what the Rebbe is saying, eyes open, chacham einav bereishe. Open your eyes and look, Chassidus, you start seeing, in a certain way, you start perceiving that everything that you do, everything in life, is some form of elikus, beislapshus. What will be when Mashiach comes? Niglik v'ed Hashem. V'ro kol pol ki ata pa'alte. Mola oris deis Hashem. That's what it's going to be. So unless you do that now, how could you say you're preparing for the Geula? To just say once in a while that I believe. And that's what the Rebbe wanted us to be permeated, to think like that. Now, the best way to do it is when you mashpia on others, so it makes you be there as well. Again, I'm not suggesting we can all hold by the levels of Yichud Elah, Yichud Tata, but this is something that could be expected. If you would envision, describe for me, put down on paper, write an essay, what would the Geula look like if Mashiach comes now in the next half hour? What's going to happen? What will this room look like? What will President Street look like? What will Kingston Avenue look like? Will there be a pizza shop? Will there be sushi? What will it all look like? Now, I don't know if you've ever asked yourself this question. Why didn't you ask yourself this question? Because we don't think practically. Because most of us, it's a far dream. We don't think we're waking up tomorrow morning and the Geula is going to be here. Because if we did, we'd probably lose a little sleep. You get excited when something special happens. And I'm not saying this critically. I'm speaking to myself just like I speak to you. But the only way to solve that is if you kochzich and you ligin, what it's going to look like. You all know the story with Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek's histalkus this year is 150 years, right? So on Tofresh Chava, 50 years ago, the Rebbe told the story by Fabrengen. Maybe it was with Gimmel Nissen is the Tzemach Tzedek's yahrzeit. So the Rebbe told the story that the Tzemach Tzedek's Chassidim asked him once why he speaks about Mashiach so much. You can imagine, Tzemach Tzedek, L'fiyerach the Rebbe, was not so much, but L'fiyerach then it was so much. So the Tzemach Tzedek answered the famous answer. You know the story? The aha. Tzolib the aha? You all know the story? Huh? You don't? And I'll tell it. So he said, what's aha? Aha means you're listening to a conversation from behind the wall, let's say. So you don't hear all the words. You only hear every fifth word. So you can't really understand what they're saying. But then they come out of the room and they tell you what they're saying. So you say, aha, now I understand this word, that word, now you make sense. So Tzemach Tzedek said, I want when the Geula comes, we shouldn't be, like we never heard of this thing before. By talking about it now, you start getting some type of taste. What we call Toyamer Chaim Zochim. You all may, I'm a hadid in eating Friday or even Thursday. Today people already start Wednesday and Tuesday night eating chont because to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Toyamer Chaim Zochim. I don't know if it's for the mitzvah, but Shalel Shmo, Tech Shalel Shmo, Bal Shmo. So Toyamer means that you train somebody. Soldiers in armies. You ever think about this? How many hours of training do soldiers in the military train? And how many hours do they actually fight a battle? Think about it. 99.9% is all training. They may never fight a battle, actually. But when they train, and the day the battle comes, they know what to do. It says in the Chassidus brings from the Ramban and from the Medrash that there are some opinions that mitzvahs today are not minatera. Mitzvahs today are tzionim, mitzvahs because it's a chinuch for the time when Moshiach will come. So when for example, you teach children, chinuch is only training for the time when they're mechuyev in it. But without training, you can't do it when the moment comes. The Rebbe could have brought the Geula, I'm sure, L'mayla Lamata, even if we weren't ready. But for some reason, there had to be something on our part that we should relate to it. And if you look, so this is not such a pella, because this talks about Lamata Lamayla. Lamata Lamayla. What's greater? Somebody gives you a gilui, or that you yourself earn the way? Now, we all would love the gilui, but we all know it's not really mine then. So to be able to make it yours, for whatever reason, it seems that we needed to have more Avedis HaTachton than we would have liked. So the answer is very clear what we have to do. There's 7 billion people on this planet, and I'm not saying everybody here can reach 7 billion, but today with technology and other things, you can reach a lot of people. And we have to give ourselves a taste and other people a taste. What Geula will look like. Until you're able to answer that question, I will say that there's no way that you can communicate Mashiach to yourself or to others, because it's not realistic. When we were children in yeshiva, we had a teacher in the 4th grade, he told us that Mashiach comes, ice cream will grow on trees. Now, children all love ice cream. Me too. So we all said, hey, can't wait for Mashiach. Ice cream on the trees. Free. Anyway, you get older a little. Then there is Eloshim, Milas and Gluskoyas and Clay Milas. There'll be all kinds of delights. Mundane Mitzim Kofar. I never found ice cream on the trees in any of my Mother Chazal. So I went over to this teacher once I was an adult. And I said, you know something? You completely fooled us. I said it jokingly, obviously. I said, you fooled us. I should sue you. Because I've been waiting for ice cream on the trees. And it doesn't say anywhere that. So he laughed, whatever. My point is, it's a nice way of maybe getting children to think it's nice. A lot of candies. There'll be a lot of candies. There'll be one big Shabbos, Sibba Shabbos, one big party. However, when you get a little older, and you start wondering, what is Geula Mashiach? And I realized that without the Rebbe talking about it, nobody would even know what it is. Even with it, most of us don't know what it is. People think it's some type of distant future that is going to happen, some type of miracles. Okay, now we know it's not only miracles. What does it mean, Mola is Deis Hashem? The Rambam says, Lo yeh isik el dasas Hashem bovad. Until you don't explain that to yourself or to others practically, I will say that you failed and you have not even begun to do what the Rebbe wants. So I was once speaking at a medical conference, doctors. They asked me to speak about medicine of the future. What will medicine be like in the Messianic times? So I told them there won't be medicine in Messianic times because there'll be no more disease and no more illness and no more death. So one doctor gets up and says, what's going to happen to all the doctors? So someone else yelled out, it says in Gemara already, Tev Sheberefim. other hareg or go to Gehenna. So we already know where the doctors are going to end up. Okay, that's a joke, fine. But I said, so he asked, what's going to happen with those doctors? That was a great question. And then I remember that so I said, I'll tell you what will happen. Instead of doctors fighting disease and fighting illness, which is so painful, and seeing death and infection and all that we see, doctors who have an intimate understanding of the human body and the human anatomy and physiology will be teaching the rest of the world the mysteries of God's wonders. The Tzalmenu Kidlusenu, that we were created, Tzelem Elikim, and who knows it better than a doctor? So instead of fighting the negative, on the contrary, you'll be teaching us the mysteries that only doctors know about the human nature, human body. Just like astronomers will teach us about the stars, and just like physicists will teach us about atoms, these are all the fingerprints of the Eibishter, of God. I want to tell you what happened when I finished explaining it. There were 300 doctors there. They all stood up and gave me a standing ovation. No, really. And they told me after, they were very moved by that. Why? Because no one ever thinks of it that way. Now, I didn't say any chiddush of my own, to be honest. I basically took the issues of the Rambam, the Rebbe's explanation. Lo yeh kol ha'elam el ladas es Hashem b'avad. What does that mean? We'll be the same people. We'll be involved with ASIC. But instead of ASIC being, business being, as an end in itself, to make money, to be successful, to be a doctor, it'll be ladas es Hashem. That you'll see the Deya Hashem in everything we do. Just like the laundromats will see the lukus in their levushim and the garments that they clean. So scientists will see it by them. That's what it means. When you hear that this way, it's not that crazy. So it's a matter of how are we going to explain this to ourselves and to others. And there's no excuse for us who learn Chassidus not to try. And when you try, you get better at it. I'm not suggesting everybody here can get up and go speak in front of doctors right away and be able to give a whole presentation. But you don't begin from, you don't begin with total success. You begin step by step. I was once just like your age. You think I knew how to do it? No. I began slowly. I wrote, I taught, and slowly developed, and I learned how to do it. Now, obviously, some of us are more skilled than others in different ways, but everybody here, guaranteed, has special keiches. Different people have different qualities. And it's your shlichus, arachrayis. And Gimmel Tammuz is the best day to commit to this. It's not a day to sit and cry. It's not a day even, go to the oil, you do other things, all fine rituals. The biggest important thing of the day is one thing and one thing only. Are you in the Rebbe's army? You're going to do what the Rebbe wants. That's all that matters. And Gimmel Tammuz, it compels us because Gimmel Tammuz teaches you that the Rebbe wants something us to do. He's not going to do it for us. The Rebbe is a Kol Yachol, could have done whatever, but he wants us to do something. There's no way around that. I know listen, we all have our moments of what's called being lazy, procrastinating. It would be very nice if we could just go to sleep and the Rebbe does the work. But my friends, that's not the deal. The Rebbe said that's not the deal. So we have no choice. And that means we got to do something. And this is a direct approach in Geula Moshiach. It begins with learning. You learn. You start learning a Maimer, you learn an Inyan, and you try to envision how does this translate into Elam Hazet, into Gashmizdik ways. I gave a few examples, just a few. There's hundreds more, obviously. Many, many more. I gave the example of whether it's the doctors or the laundromat. But there's nothing in life that is not a expression of Elokus, right? That's what we learn. Everything in earth is a expression of Elokus. But Eibishter made a big tzimtzum, which conceals. And that's why people are busy doing their thing, and they're disconnected from that. Parsha Emir, Tovshin Nun Aleph. So the Rebbe started Fabring, and he said, smiling, he said, he's getting all these letters since he's talking about the Gula Mashiach. People are writing to him that they're all disturbed. Why? Because the Gula Mashiach is going to come. What's going to happen? I built up a business. I have a few homes. I have furniture. I have equity. It's called. I have investments. You all know what these words are? Okay? So they said, and the Mashiach will come. Well, everything I built, it will be all gone. And the Rebbe, I remember, smiled again. He said, Dafin Shmeir Hab. The Geula is not that you're going to lose anything. You're only going to gain something. And the Rebbe said then that Faket would be Goyla Geula. Geula is the same letters as Geula. We're not taking anything away. We're only adding an aleph. So you'll have your furniture, the Rebbe said. You'll have your investments. You'll have everything. But you're going to have and see that it's all Salib the Aleph. It's all directed Ladasas Hashem Bilvad, as I said. So see, think of it that way. The Rebbe was talking in ACs that you could relate to. Now, Kamuman, it's easier to just sit around and just focus on Elam Haza and just do things, shame our own Ma'ala Taiva and whatever it is that we want to do. But if you want to follow the Rebbe is saying, instead of focusing just on what is in it for you, a little understanding the Lakusha Bezeh, the Geula Bezeh. Now, when a person thinks like that and starts talking about that, to me that's an effort. No one's asking us to finish the whole job. The Rebbe never said that. He said he wants us to do something, some effort, some etzbektana. And I can't see anyone who's a chassid today that we're left with unfinished business. How can we fabreng and not talk about this? The Rebbe made a direct appeal, a direct order, you could even say. In Tov Shinun Aleph, he said, I did everything, and now you have to do. And until the Gula comes, we have unfinished business. And I can't see how we could talk about almost anything without addressing that. So, the main thing is like this. Look, you're young, energetic. The Rebbe changed the world with Bochum. The Shluchim were not 40-year-olds, not 50-year-olds, not people my age. They were 20-year-olds and 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds. And they are people who did not have any cheshbenis and just went and made a revolution. My objective here is to get you guys to become revolutionaries, like the Rebbe wants you to be. And a revolutionary doesn't mean you have to become a mazik or or destroy. A revolutionary means do not be afraid to think big. Do not be afraid to think in terms of, yes, we could change the world. Because that's what the Rebbe wanted. He wanted to change the world. Simple as that. Now, some people can do it on a big farnam, some people can do it on a small farnam. And it's not difficult today, because today with technology, literally you can reach millions of people. Now, I know at this age you're supposed to not even know there's technology and stuff like that, but there comes a time when you'll find out, and technology reaches many people, that I can tell you. Reaches many people. I was once traveling, I went to a Shabbaton in East Hampton, labeled Baumgarten Shliach there, and I stopped for gas in a gas station in some town there. After I finished the gas, it was right near the gas station was a club, some type of party place. So it's Friday afternoon, and the guy comes over to me. He's like parking attendant. He's parking cars. He asked me if I'm staying for the party. So I said no, but I'm going to another party. So he said to me, what kind of party? So I told him, Friday night Shabbos party with a bunch of Jews, etc. Now he didn't look to me Jewish at all. He was looked like some hick from some hick town. But he's very intrigued. He starts asking me questions about this, about what is Shabbos, what do I do? So I told him I'm a writer, I'm a teacher. He said to me, you send out an email every week? I said, yeah. He said, give me your, I took his email out. Fine, I went on to Shabbos, then I came back to New York, home, after Shabbos. And I gave the email to my office, and fine. I forgot, I didn't forget the story, but I never thought I'd hear from him again. Without exaggeration, around 7 years later, 7 years, maybe 8 years even, I get an email one day from him. He says, you probably don't remember me. I was the guy that was parking cars, and I gave you my email address. You probably didn't think I was Jewish, but I'm Jewish. I never had a Jewish education. As a matter of fact, my parents were killed in a car accident when I was young. So I was shuffled around from one house to another, and it was a nightmare. And I never got anything Jewish, but I know I'm Jewish. And I have to tell you, your emails have become my Judaism. Literally, he said to me, I pray with it, and he started reading. He said, it's my Hanukkah, it's my Purim, it's my Pesach, my Yom Kippur. I don't go to synagogue. I get your email Thursday night, and that's what I pray with on Shabbos. He started saying things, and I saw clearly that he knew, and this was over 7 years, that he's been reading hundreds of emails about every parsha and he knew it all. He was saying to me, and parsha Keirach, and parsha this, and parsha that, this lesson, that lesson. It's one story, and I remember after that thinking to myself, if there was no emails, what the likelihood that he would come to New York to a class of mine? No, he was not. But an email, what does it take? It's a press of a button. It doesn't cost anything. Just put him on a list. 50,000 people, one more person getting it. And it could change a person's life. And I remember the Rebbe writing in a Fabring in a Sikha, Mishpotim Tavshim Dalit. And he writes about technology. And he writes that technology, the Rebbe's Asis, is a koyach adir, was der Eberster at reingepflanzt in Elam Haza. The koyach adir means a tremendous, I guess, an awesome power that the Eberster planted into this world. Because remember, technology was not born today. Adam and Chava in Gan Eden, there was already electricity, and there was already atoms, and there was already all the forces in nature that today we're tapping into. Human beings didn't create the airwaves and sound waves. We're just learning to create instruments that tap into these things. And it was a very interesting, you can look it up, I think it's printed in Chelik Chavov L'Kutei Sichos Nei Sofos. Very interesting sikh about technology. How it's the Rebbe uses it also as how everything is, gives an example of technology as a dugma in Chassidus, where it says, Moshe Avram Leipzig time and Moshe Avram Psik time and Moshe Leipzig time. Which is a concept of Chassidus that by Moshe, how Moshe is Lamayla, that's how he's Lamata. And Avram, how he's Lamayla, is not the way he's Lamata. So the Rebbe said, gave an example from radio and television. Because how it's transmitted is exactly as it is in one place, it's transmitted to another place. So you see the Rebbe using technology to explain ideas in Chassidus. And so I said to myself, and I say to everybody, what does it take to write an email? So if you have a nice machshava, a nice warm thought, today you can reach millions of people. So after that, I became like a crazy, obsessive collector of emails. Because I said to myself, it's such an easy way. You just get someone's email, you send them a nice thought, you never know what's going to be. Only possible today. I'm just giving a small dugma. There are hundreds of such examples. So, l'chaim to you all, and l'chaim that you should, the Rebbe once told my shver in the Yechidus many years ago, Tavshin Yud Aleph, that he was a bocher, the Rebbe said to him, and he used to work in publishing, so he prepared the Maimer for that year that came out for Rosh Hashanah. So the Rebbe told him, since you prepared the Maimer, go to the oil and tell the shver, tell him the Frierdiker Rebbe, in other words, that you prepared and should give you a bracha for a new year. So my shver, looked at the Rebbe and was like hinting, I don't have to go anywhere, I'm by my Rebbe right here, He didn't say anything, but he just said, he's here. The Rebbe sending him to the oil. So the Rebbe told him, "Zos gein dorten und rei dorten wie du redest da." You should go there and speak there like you speak here. That was the first thing. Then he's concluded, but he said, "I made a dika bracha," which I want to give you. The Rebbe said, "The Eibishter soll helfen, as a teil von den Inyanim, was the Rebbe gewollt eis finden in the Welt, soll sich eis finden durch dir." Everybody understood that? That the Eibishter should help, that part of what the Rebbe wanted to fulfill in this world should be fulfilled through you. I don't think there's a better bracha that one can give to someone. L'chaim. So what's it say that here? It's almost 8 o'clock, okay. What was the plan anyway? What are your plans tonight? You're going, what do you, no?
Sitting with you for 12 hours.
I have to cooperate, but, I remember a few Bochen came over to me in 770 a while ago, a year ago, and they wanted to fabring with me. It was Motzei Shabbos. I said, what time? They said around 12, 1 o'clock at night. Okay, fine. I'm usually up. So I said to them, why so late? Shabbos ends 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Or maybe it was earlier a little. So they said, we have achonos to do. They eat some pizza, falafel, Motzei Shabbos minhagim, to make sure that the Kedusha Shabbos, enters into the weekdays practice. So I said to them, look, I like pizza actually. It's not something I have a problem with, but I have to tell you, but I don't feel comfortable for pizza. And then we go to Fabring, and I told them that the Rebbe Rashab, there was a chassid called Yisrael Nevler. You may have heard of him, Yisrael Nevler. Yisrael Levin. Yeah, he has his grandchildren. And so Yisrael Nevler was a interesting chassidish bacher and younger man later. He was a mechutin with his daughter married Avram Mayor's son, Levin, the oldest of the Drizzins was Levin. She passed away a number of years ago. Anyway, so Yisrael Neville, the Rebbe Rashab told him they should be up Thursday night. Thursday night, the meaning of mishmer, learning, whatever. So, of course, the Rebbe Rashab says to be up Thursday night, you're up Thursday night. However, to be up Thursday night, sometimes you get tired. So what did Yisrael Neville do? From time to time, Thursday afternoon, he would go get a snooze, he'd go get a nap. Now the Frierdiker Rebbe, as you know, took meticulous attendance. You know, Frierdiker Rebbe would see every bacher what time, and then he would review it with the Rebbe Rashab. They're looking at Thursdays, Yisrael Neville, and every second Thursday, every few Thursdays, he's gone from Seder in the afternoon. So the Rebbe Rashab called him in and said to him, Yisrael, my high, you know, what is this? So he says, the Rebbe gesagt, am medav zaynuf. Donnerstag bei Nacht, auf machen amol achones. You know, it's like a preparation to fulfill the Rebbe's rots. Like he's blaming it on the Rebbe, basically. So the Rebbe Rashab said to him, what's meinst du? After schlafen kann man kommen zu nicht schlafen. That's what he said. What's meinst du? After sleeping, you can come to not sleeping. So I told the Bochum, I said, pizza's nice, but I don't think from pizza can man kommen zu verbringen. Anyway, that was what I told him. So I'm not just mentioning the story that just happened. I was just thinking about it. So they did call me verbringen at 9 o'clock instead of 12 o'clock, and then probably they went after that to get if the verbringen was Pulasei, that's what probably happened. Listen, Klei Sanef, you know the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe used to learn with the Maggid of the Maggid's son, Rabbi Avraham Malach. And once Avraham Malach almost had Klei Sanef, they gave him a bagel with butter, right? Today, a bagel and butter is not enough, so pizza is something. After Fabringen is about to expire, the Shom is about to go Hech Madregas. You need something to ground us, right? Would you agree? That's one of the ways. That's why we need these. Today, you have everything. Crown Heights, Baruch Hashem, pizza shops, burgers, stuff, you name it. I'm not going to mention every restaurant, which I'm sure you know about. That's how it is. I was in Yerushalayim a few weeks ago, and I said, I was there for a chassid, so we had to go out and find some place to eat. So I said, who knows what's going on? They said, talk to the Bachman. They know every restaurant. Because I guess the dorms don't really feed them the caliber of... I don't know what's going on in Argentina. I was in Argentina, and that's where they took me to the kosher McDonald's. I don't know if it still exists, but yeah. Huh? I went there when my book came out in Spanish, so Rabbi Grumblat, they brought me down. They had a whole book, they have a book fair once a year or something.
Who translated?
Maybe Nelson Grumblat? I'm not sure. No, I think they had a professional and he looked it over. I don't know, I'm not sure. Maybe he did. They have it in Spanish. So they brought me down there. I was speaking, so then they said, you want some McDonald's? I said, oh, we eat today for you. But they said, no, there's glatt kosher McDonald's. I said, it's the quality of a McDonald's, like in, they said, we know it's the quality, we know it's glatt kosher. Okay, fine, we went. It's still open, really? I think it's the only place on earth that has, see, I know, I remember the food. It was one of the outstanding things in Buenos Aires. Huh? I'm not going to comment. No, it was nice. I mean, I was there many years. I was there a number of, not recently. When was I last time? I was there 2-3 times. The one I'm talking about was probably, I was around Tovshin, maybe Samach, what's that, Tovshin? Samach, maybe Samach Aleph. That would be almost 15 years ago. No, but I was there later. I was there later, a few years later. I was in Brazil and then Bolivia. Oh, when I went, I think that was already, I remember it was the thing that struck me was the barracks because of the bombing there a number of years ago. On the yeshivas, the barracks is still there. I remember it was like a war zone a little. I mean, you get used to it, but I remember it was a serious, because they bombed the embassy, I think, right? Sure. Right. But that many years ago. Only 5 years ago? No, 25 years ago. I see now a lot of groups when, what's his name, Shlomo Levi and others, they bring groups here from... So I've playing with a lot of these Argentinian groups. They're the young guys, they got energy, they're like the Sfazi. The Mexicans, they They got the power, whatever you want to call it. They're like, yeah. Oh, the young. I don't know about the. Argentina is an interesting country. Yeah. Like every place has plenty birurim necessary. You know, kalkite. Yeah. So what are your plans really? I mean, I'm happy to fabring further, but you know, like everyone said in the fabring, tell the chacham the kamed. If what I said till now didn't help, I don't know if saying more is going to help. So you know, the way these things. I'm fine. I feel, you know, I have to thank you because I feel young when I sit with young people. Right, mincha. Yeah, but I have to go at some point. What time is it?
8 o'clock.
Yeah, I see 8 o'clock. We're sitting already almost 2 hours. Okay. Well, if you have to daven mincha, that's for sure. It's already.
Any questions?
Yeah, for sure. Daven now. I'll sit a few more minutes. Daven and then we'll sit a few minutes. Have some questions. Tamagarari, your mother, a few other, Leah Khan, Mrs. Swordloff. Yeah. They like the stories. They like Makedas. They like his design. You know, they like. You shoot straight like an arrow. That's how your mother says. Your grandmother, she says. Yeah. The Zokst with Ravzo. This is good. Why, you guys never listened to it? It's not just for Bobbas.
Yeshiva, it's like.
I bring I get a lot of questions from I mean, it's anonymous. You don't know who. Bochum for sure. See, a lot of people listen. So Baruch Hashem. Everything is. I try to bring everything with Madam McCamus.
Question? So you said before that the Rebbe said that Moshiach comes, nobody's going to miss out on their gashmis. So how do you fit Moshiach and everything for the Eibusher with fancy cars and big houses and sushi and pizza?
I say again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. That was.
So you quoted the Rebbe before that when Moshiach comes, nobody's going to miss out on any of the gashmis that we built up over here.
Gashmi, but not chumrius. That's the difference. You know the difference
We're going
between.
to survive on bread and water. And
No, I didn't say bread and water. Bread and water, no.
if you need
Look, you know, we humans are the only ones that eat more than we need to eat. Okay? Animals only eat what they need to eat and then stop. There's no such thing as sitting in Fresik. So number one, you know, when Mashiach comes, we will do exactly what is healthy, not what's not healthy. Let's start with that. So just to eat, no matter what it is, that's not even from a medical point of view, it's not necessarily healthy. And when you're focused on what you have to do with your life, b'derech klal, you don't have time and you don't have a reason to waver. You know, today we live in a world where we have a Yetzer Hara and we have different things that distract us. When Mashiach comes, our pleasure will be in other things. It's not like we'll be deprived. You're not going to sit around and say, "Oh, I missed the days when I could eat pizza all day." I'm not even saying there won't be pizza. Why not? It's kosher, you know. But I mean to say it's not going to be, because you'll be excited by the life that we live. It's an exciting life to be able to live a life with purpose and driven. But you know, you need to learn more about the world to understand that. So the world doesn't have to change. The only difference is whether it will be just for me. Today people live for me. When you wake up in the morning, you think about yourself first. And a real a Chassidish life is not thinking about yourself first. You think about another, what the Eibusher wants, and so on. Now today that sounds like a burden, but when you think of it in a straight way, you know, you can see that it can actually be a beautiful type of life. The Rebbe has a Meredik Sicha it's printed in Chelik Chav Hei Vayigash. But the Rebbe wrote a whole section that is very interesting. The Rebbe says there, you know, there's a Machlekes in Gemara, Talmud Gadol or Maisa Gadol, right? So Gemara in Kedushin is learning greater or is doing greater? And the Rebbe, and the Gemara answers, Talmud Gadol Shemevel de Maisa. Talmud is greater because it has B'chlal Masayim, has both. Both learning and brings to Maisa. Maisa only had. But then it says in Sfarim, Medrash Shmuel, other places, and when Mashiach comes, it'll be Maisa Gadol. So the Sturm Dika Kasha. Why? Talmud always has both, Talmud and Maisa. Why would Maisa be greater without Talmud? Understand the question? And the Rebbe answers, amazing answer. He says, why do we need to learn? We need to learn because on our own we don't know what's right, what's wrong. When it comes to eating, for example, you don't need to look in Shulchan Aruch to tell you that you're hungry, right? Most of us, all of us know when you're hungry, your stomach tells you you're hungry. When you're tired, your body tells you you're tired. But in Elam Hazah, because of the Hel and the Hester, so Eibishter made it in a way that you cannot know, you don't feel when you're spiritually hungry. So you don't feel today is Shabbos, you don't feel today is Yom Kippur, today is Sukkot, whatever. So you need to look in the Shulchan Aruch or in Torah to tell you. Talmud tells you what the Maisa show. When Mashiach comes, it says, Even Mikir Tizak. The world, you will be Gashmi, is just like when you feel that you're hungry, and just like when you feel you're thirsty, your body and your soul will tell you that I'm missing something. So once you know it naturally, you don't need to learn. You don't need to learn in Shulchan Aruch what you're supposed to be doing. That's the answer, what? Because we will naturally be drawn to what is Ruchnisdik. So why do you need to learn Torah then? So the Rebbe says, when I get a case, we'll learn Torah for Hechli Yechudim. I don't know if you all appreciate this word. Think about it. It's a Meredike way of looking at how the world will be. Today we don't live in a healthy world. Then it will be a healthy world. So you'll naturally crave Ruchnius, like we naturally crave today Gashmi. That's the Likud. Now, so that means that there'll be Gashmis, but it's not going to be the end in itself. If there's Gashmis, it's in order to get deeper Ruchnius.
What are the rules about interpreting the lessons and things in as something on a Likos? Which lesson on a Likos are you teaching? What's the protocol?
What do you mean? Which one to begin with?
I'm saying you say you look at something in the world and you interpret it to be a certain lesson, giving off a certain meaning.
I gave you example from the Rebbe with a laundromat. I gave you example from doctors. When you learn the Rebbe's letters and you learn Chassidus gives plenty of examples. Almost everything is an example. You tell me something, I'll tell you where it says
I'm saying,
it's an
which
example.
example will it be? I mean, there could be many things which have multiple meanings and could give off two lessons. Which one is it? Who decides?
Why don't you start with one lesson at a time and take the lesson to heart and act on it and then go to the next lesson. There could be 1,000 lessons from things. What do you mean, who decides?
When
Firstly,
you speak about purpose, the reason why this thing was created was to give off a certain Gilui Alikus.
so the Rebbe,
Which Gilui Alikus are we talking about?
if you're unable to figure it out yourself, you go to Mashpia or somebody that knows how to learn. And they'll be able to figure it out. It's not that complicated. The Baal Shem Tov says everything we see and hear is a lesson to us. If you use a little common sense, you can figure out what the lesson is. You know, who's it? Nachum Chernobyl, not Nachum. Who said that? There's 7 things we learn from a Ganef. Even from a Ganef, you learn things.
It's like an Indian, like to bring it out.
There's nothing. I mean, you don't have to be right or wrong, as long as it's a lesson that makes sense and makes you a better person. That's all you need. So it's not, don't make it theoretical. Give me an example and we could talk about it. You're talking too theoretical.
I'm saying, so take a laundromat.
So the Rebbe gave a Heirog. You have a different Heirog as one today. The Rebbe's Heirog was that. What would be, so that one we have. Give me another one. Give me another example. There's thousands and thousands of Ashgacha Pratis every day in a person's life. Everyone has a lesson. Sometimes it's obvious what the lesson is, sometimes not. If you don't know how to find it, talk to a mashpia, talk to someone you trust. If you give me an example, I'll tell you what I think the lesson is. But it's not so difficult. It's using Torah logic and using our own common sense, you know?
Whatever said to learn Yanagol Mashiach, whatever meant to look, to see it in like things but Pashut Kipshut in Mazer or like the Mashal. You could learn to say this whatever and apply it to your life, whatever. Not to be malvish in things like a laundromat. Is it Indian like to see it in a laundromat or?
I think so, because that makes it tangible and real. Isaiah remains abstract. When you're able to bring it down into real life, then you know it's real. If it remains abstract, it's not going to be real. It has to be real, real, real. As I said, envision what would the Geula What would your world look like if the Gula came right now? What would your house look like? What would your room look like? What would you look like? What would Elam Hazel look like? Absolutely. When you look at this, what does it mean, Elikus and Welt? What the world will look like? Why? That's not to. You're doing exactly what I said we shouldn't do, which is making it abstract. You're sending it off in Atzilus.
Right.
It means on this earth.
Even
This
in
earth.
our life, even
Huh?
like in our life Gufa, so everybody has like a place, their Meichen, their Midas, but is there any in the Davke to like find it in the Dash?
Absolutely. Baal Shem Tov says everything's Hashgacha Pratis and everything's Hira and Avedis Hashem. Absolutely. Where else? Where else? What else are you going to find? Where? On the roof? You're going to find it in life, in your life. What better? Chol Drachecha Deyu. What does that mean? Chol Drachecha Deyu. Everything we do, every path, is really meant to be a way of understanding and experiencing the Eibishter. So, yes, there are times, obviously there's, as Chassidus says, there are times of Zmane Kedusha, let's say Shabbos, Yontif. So that's when the Aveda is a Shabbos and Yontif the Kaved. There's times when we're involved in Uvdin the Chel. So then you have to find in a Chel. Obviously on Shabbos, it may be more, we have different times that require different Avedas. But most of the time we're busy with Rishus. B'chol Rechecha Deyu is, most of the activities of a person are B'chol Rechecha, things that you do on a daily basis. It's training yourself to see the Welt as a Keli for Elikus instead of it being an end in itself. Let's put it that way. The Rebbe saw technology right away, Elikus Shabazah. He sees a doctor, Elikus Shabazah. He sees an author, Elikus Shabazah. Everything you encounter, you look for the godly component, the Aleph. That's the whole point. Any other questions, gentlemen?
You just mentioned one of the nicest views were that if you think about what we're doing is that we're part of a movement going on for 3,000 years. There's most people in the world that are just living in their day for the now, the me, b'chulu. In theory, you could saying someone could justify his life very much. I'm part of a 5,000-year chain of continuing the human race, and the best way to do that is having a lot of money, and by being healthy, and by building a better world for tomorrow, and being involved in politics and b'chulu. I'm part of a 5,000-year mission over here, which is...
What does that have to do with 5,000 years? It has to do with now, when you were born and you die, and that's it. Who else benefits from your
the human
selfish...
race as a whole.
Who says that? The person's selfish, the human race benefits? Wow. I mean, I see...
It survives, I'm saying, because my kid has a good life, so he won't die probably, because... And he will have...
You can't find an answer? You need me to answer this question? I mean, huh?
It's easier.
You know the difference between being selfish and not being selfish? So you're going to say selfish is part of 5,000 years of history? It doesn't make any sense. I thought you were going to ask the other way around, that even by us, we also see people are selfish and they do things short term. That's what I thought you were going to ask.
Alternative.
Yeah. I think it's a simple pashta thing. Most people do not think about the future or the past. They think about right now. So it's temporary. I don't care whether 5,000 years people have been selfish. Selfish is selfish. A person who dedicates his life to a cause that's going to change the world in some way, that's going to last longer than we are, that began before us, is a very different lifestyle. It's night and dark. It's night and day. I can't see even how you can compare it. I could tell you that most of us, even in the frum world, Chassidisha world, also, the Gemara says most people choose Chaya Shah over Chaya Elam. You know, that's how it is, because if someone will say to you right now, I'll give you $100,000, and that's it, and you'll have no eternity in your life, only temporary, most people would grab it. And someone also, I'll give you $5,000, but you'll have eternity. Most people say, I don't want it. That's how it is. We are short-term people. Look, any of you have heard of the word called a taiva? You know what a taiva is? Huh? It's the concept of this taiva. Yeah, have you ever succumbed to your taivas? Probably, yeah. You don't have to go around the table and all the details, but let's just what's the power of a taiva? Think about it. It's completely short-term. Right now, you have a taiva for something, you get obsessed with it. Even your seichel may tell you nothing long-term comes from this. It's just pure, this moment of pleasure, and everything falls. And it makes no difference. No logic will help, nothing. That's a perfect example of the moment. And you may even know, B'shas Ma'aseh, someone say, anything good's going to come out of this? You say, no, but I enjoy it. Or it's so powerful I can't stop myself. Whatever it is, the type is. I'm not going into the detail what it is. That's how humans work. That doesn't exist in the animal world. Animals don't have typhus. Animals are wired to eat. They hunt, they eat, and then they go to sleep. And then they don't eat more. Because it says in Tanya, they mashanim tafkidam. They're like a clock, like the sun rises. It's only the human being that has the ability to choose between doing something that's meaningful or doing something that's meaningless. How much time do you waste a day, every one of you? Hours, right? We waste hours and hours. And it doesn't really bother us. You only live that long because right now you're not thinking about the future. Right now I'm enjoying myself, so I waste time. Someone told me today, a guy, Bakri, says, I got addicted to one of these video games, Candy Crush, whatever it is. You've heard of this thing? He says, and he says, I have to tell you, at least 2 hours a day I play it. When I wake up, when I go to sleep. And he said, I'm embarrassed to even say 2 hours a day. It's like an unbelievable amount of time. And for nothing. I gain nothing except the distraction, the escape, and so on. So I said, good, at least you have that hakara, the dias hamachla, chetzi refu. But when you get consumed, that's just to give you an example. So someone's going to say, well, they've been doing this for 5,000 years, playing Candy Crush. I don't know if they've been doing that for 5,000 years, I was saying before, it's a schus that we have a Rebbe that told us what our shlichus is, that told us how we can change the world, that you feel you're part of a history of people like, it's like a marathon. You talked about 5,000 years, a marathon. A marathon like what they call a relay marathon, right? So you have a few people run the race. And every generation passes the baton on to the next. That's unbelievable koyach. That's non-esagabanok, the midget. That's what we have. Selfishness only leads to temporary. There's nothing. I didn't say that. First of all, I know non-Jews that are very eternal in a sense. They're dedicated to good things. I didn't say this is just Jews or just in Quran or just Chassidim and so on. Human beings have this pechira. I know a lot of non-Jews that are very admirably connected to things that are very permanent. So it's not about Yidden or not Yidden. It's about choices we make. And I know Yidden who are all completely selfish. All they think about is themselves and all day, money and so on and so forth. So it's not a Jewish thing or this. I'm just saying, we, as a chassid, as a coming to Gimmel Tammuz, what the Rebbe gave us is even more like the tachlis hachayim. Why did your soul come down to this earth? Almost any intelligent person will not say just to make money and take care of myself. They'll say, I don't have an alternative. I don't know what else to do. I wasn't taught. Or I enjoy what I'm doing, so I'm not thinking about the big picture. But no one's going to say, my soul came down to earth to make $1 million. No human being on earth will say that. They may say to make $1 million, so I should build a healthy family or give tzedakah, maybe. But no one, it's never the thing in itself. How could that be? Yeah.
So how do you explain to a person on the street what the Rebbe does to the world? Like, do we understand this?
I asked that question before. It's a very good question. I was just in Toronto Tuesday, and I gave a whole talk on this. And I could send you to the video. The audio tape. As I have a record. There's a lot of ways to do it. You have to firstly challenge and understand that you can't just say the Rebbe is a great man and the Rebbe created 4,000 Chabad houses that opened their doors to every Jew. Because number one is, I don't know if that changed the world. There's 7 billion people on this planet. How many people do you think even know the name Rebbe? And remember the rule. For some reason, I always felt this way, even when I was a child. The rule is that when you live in a community like we do, lack of a better word, is called ghetto mentality. You see everything from your eyes. You don't see how other people see it. So we think what's important to us is important to everybody, but it's not necessarily the case, as we probably know. And then you have friends that everybody reinforces it. You know, it's like you go to the mikveh, oh, that's it. Then you go to the grocery store, then you go to the school. You know, we reinforce our perceptions of life. You know, open-minded people who know that there are a lot of people in this world. There's a lot of different ways to look at things. Now, I'm not suggesting and saying, Chaz v'sholom, that we may have the emes, no one else has it except us. But it's also likely that most of us don't know what the emes is, just you grew up with it, so you're, like everybody believes that what they have is the true thing. So until you don't force yourself to explain it in a real way, most people feel they don't need to explain it. The Rebbe is the greatest man that ever lived, and that's that. Someone asks you, can you show me how? I don't need to show. So the first thing you have to be able to think like that. Once you think like that, I have different ways I explain it. I mean, there's a lot of ways to go. And I wrote a book called Torah Meaning for Life. There I actually did that. It's a book on 30 topics that matter to people. And each chapter I tried to show what the Rebbe was machadish over what everybody else says. Let's say about children, about education, about business, about health, about death, about pain. So if you want to look, you could look at those chapters. And you'll see I begin each chapter talking about a topic that anyone can talk about. Let's say children. I mean, a lot of people talk, children, there are millions of children in the world. And yet, the Rebbe has an approach to children that's unique. Kimuvin is based on Torah. I can't say it's the Rebbe's Chiddush, because the Rebbe's Chiddush itself is 90 generations of Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat Peh. But it's the Rebbe's language, it's through the Rebbe's lens. And then there are things that the Rebbe was mamish, like a leader of a generation, addressed the problems of our time. I'll give you one example, because I don't have time to go through a lot, but I'll give you one example. One of the biggest challenges in our lives is exactly what I was speaking about before, purpose. Most people live a life without purpose. Mamish. That's why you'll see, let's say in the United States, I mean, all countries, what is the soccer season like in Argentina? Right? Okay? Like football here, baseball. People are obsessed with it. That could be more important to them than anything else they're doing. Am I correct? Now, is that a life of purpose? No. It's replacing something that it's exciting, it's feeding them, it's like a drug. I'm not even saying it's destructive, but it's a drug that has no real teyelis, except I'm consumed with the experience. So you live in a world there's no purpose. Now, this wasn't the case really hundreds of years ago. You know why? Because we didn't have a lot of free time. Goyim and Eden, l'havdil, didn't have free time. You spend 8 hours a day toiling in a farm to produce a sack of potatoes to be able to eat. You don't have time to play around games, play games, or to watch television, or to travel. Today we have so much free time because of technology, because today a sack of potatoes, you just go to the fruit store and you buy potatoes. You don't have to sit under the sun and work in a field. You know, this changed in the last few hundred years. So with all the free time, it became exposed that people are without purpose. So what does the Rebbe become? A real manig ador. Even though the concept of shlichus existed before, but he made shlichus a central component. Now we see shlichus as the kinus hashluchim and the shluchim of Chabad. No, shlichus is a concept that you're sent to this earth with a mission, with a purpose. So the Rebbe is addressing one of the biggest clippers of our time, which is purposelessness. You know, no meaning, no direction, with giving people and saying, no, your neshama came to earth with a purpose. So you could say, one second, the Rebbe was not the first one to say it. It's true. The Baal Shem Tov wasn't the first one to say Simcha is important, or Ahavas Yisrael is important, or that Isavas is B'chol Rega even. These things said before, but he understood that the time now the Rebbe says, Chiddush of Baal Shem Tov, that the Chiddush of Baal Shem Tov, that he made it a Yesodistic thing. You know the story with some of the Frierdiker Rebbe. He was once in a hotel in Germany. He went to visit, and a delegation of German rabbis, frum rabbis, came to see him in the hotel lobby in Berlin. And they asked him several questions. One of the questions they asked to him, you know, we're already almost 1,000 years. The German community, before Reform, was very strong in Frankfurt and other places, very frum Orthodox community. They said, we're here and we don't have Chassidus. What is Chassidus Mechadish? We're from Eden without Chassidus. The Frierdiker Rebbe answered, very interesting answer. he stood up in the hotel lobby. It was a beautiful lobby, and he said, "What do you see in the big lobby?" So the thing that was most outstanding in the lobby were big marble pillars. So they said, these big, beautiful marble pillars. Okay. Then he walked over to the pillar with a lamp that was there, and said, "What do you see now?" So they said, "Oh, now we see the design, the flowers, the little images, engraved in the marble." Okay. Why didn't you say that before? He said, "Because from a distance, we only saw the pillar. When you stand close, you shine a light." He says, "That's Chassidus." Chassidus was not mechadish pillars or flowers. But Chassidus shined a light on the flowers that became somewhat concealed over the years and goals. Chassidus is not mechadish. Chassidus was given at Har Sinai. But Chassidus shows the key things, the beauty of a neshama. Well, the neshama was created by the Baal Shem Tov, by the Alter Rebbe. The Eibishter gave him Yipach Ba'ap of Nishmas Chaim, the Adam Arish. There was always a neshama. But Chassidus shines a light on the neshama. And that's something we need today. The same thing with the Rebbe. The Rebbe shined a light on shluchos because that is what's needed. What would be with all these thousands of shluchim? You're in Argentina. There'd be no Jews in Argentina, Chabad, because everyone would stay where the Rebbe was. What would be with all the people that became shluchim? Some of them would say, I don't know, I'd be a barber, I'd be a plumber, I'd be this, I'd be a that. A life, avdavki with a tachlis. And the Rebbe showed that you could live a life with a real tachlis. That you could say, Yiridus HaNeshama Beguf, that your neshama came down Lamata to achieve this thing. That is a very big, and we take it for granted because we grew up with these words. But I've explained this to secular people and they're blown away. They say, really? And then the next question is, how do I find my mission? Everybody asks the next question. How do I find my mission? I'm giving you one taste of something, but there's a lot more than this.
What do you answer to that question?
There I tell them they're going to have to buy the book. At some point. I gave enough free information.
How is that different than any other religion? Other religions that tell you that they have purpose in life, you have to talk to this guy and this guy that'll give you purpose in life. And what
So first of all, that's fine too. Those other religions got it from Yiddishkeit too.
No problem. But
Okay, so
what-
fine, but but you happen to be a Jew, so why do you want to be a Christian?
No.
There's nothing wrong. No, it's very good. They're very good. The Eibishter created Adam and Chava, La'avda L'Shamra. 1 second. The Jews embraced this purpose and mission. They received Torah, and over the thousands of years, the Goyish world and many other religions embraced the same principle. That's great. We love that. We're not trying to make them Jewish. The Rambam says that Christianity and Islam actually are the Yasher Saderech for the Geula. So it's perfectly fine. It's actually very good that other religions embrace this idea, and that's a sign that Torah had an impact. It's perfectly fine. We're not trying to be Megayed anybody.
No, and what if you meet a Jew that tells you that I don't see anything in Judaism over any other religion because of that purpose? If they all adapt to the
So
same purpose.
the answer is study and you'll see it, like anything. Nothing is seen without learning about it. You may not see it, so you have to learn it. You don't get into debates. I don't get into debates ever. I never debate anybody. You ask good questions, but the answer to the question is learn and see. Ask them, how do you know medicine works? Go to medical school and you find out. When you read it, you learn. You
had a debate with that guy who brought you and your brother to ask you a question about what's a chassid. He read a whole poem of the chassid in the dark with the lamp. Forgot his name. It was like
Peter Himmelman?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Rebbe would be the happiest person if you told the Rebbe that Goyim in the world, the Rebbe had, every time you see by dollars, by Yechidus, mayors, Jews and non-Jews, always the Rebbe told them why, and always the Rebbe encouraged them all to be a shliach essentially, to use their position to somewhat bring tzedek and yesh into the world. So that's great. It's exactly what we want.
Regarding Shabbos for Neneach, so there's how much did the Rebbe push it? And also I heard, I don't know how much it's true or whatever, that there might in later years that the Rebbe made it a little bit less. I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't think it's true. I think that some people tried certain things and the Rebbe didn't want them to do that, so he told them not to do it. So in their mind it means that it's in the Mems, hours, tens and tens and tens of hours that the Rebbe spoke about, the Rambam and Sof Perek Ches and Hilchos Malachim, that we Jews have responsibility to inspire non-Jews in the Sheva Mitzvahs. And I think it's very much a big part of our shlichus. I think the Rebbe was, as many things, ahead of his time. And I think Chabad Chassidim have not yet even come close to understanding what that means. I deal with this because I think I'm involved in that world. I deal with a lot of non-Jews. But I think most Lubavitchers don't know what to do with that. And they really basically ignore those sichos, if you really want to ask me. You know, Shluchim included, they say, I have enough with Jews, I don't have time for non-Jews. The Rebbe made it very clear. And I'll tell you honestly, how could the Gula come if you don't affect the whole world? The Gula is not just for Jews. So, this is, I think, one of the things that is still unfinished business. We're going to need to inspire the next generation, like you guys, to start understanding these sikhs and see there's real ways to implement that. You know, when the Rebbe, the only statement the Rebbe made when he said, when the CNN guy asked the Rebbe, what's your message to the world? What did the Rebbe say? Moshiach is on his way, and we can speed up his coming through acts of goodness and kindness. That mitzvah of acts of goodness and kindness, and actually even to understand what's the difference in goodness and kindness, I don't see much being done in our Chabad world. Le'esata. You know, this is a Fabrengen, we can't focus on everything, but if you want to talk about a big thing, this is a big one. Very big one. You know, I actually had someone I had collected together all the sikhs of the Rebbe with the Mafteach on Shem Mrs. Bnei mostly from the Mems. It's over 700 pages, 600-700 pages, just on this topic. And I have it, you know, I read it. When you read it, it's Marchiv Daite Shalada, because you see the Rebbe's scope, very, very big. And I think, to be honest, I think, you know, the word parochial, well, most Jews are parochial. Parochial means very focused on their community, you know, on their picture. They don't see the world. And the Frum world especially is very much into my world. And that idea of Melech al Kol Ha'aretz, not just Melech Yisrael, has yet to really catch. And I think there's many reasons. I mean, the fact of the matter is most Eden think, and talk off the record, is that a guy basically should be walking on all four, and only Misad Bechira is walking on 2 feet. You know, that's how most people think. If you start looking at the Rebbe's Sichos, you'll see it's a very different picture. Now, the Rebbe didn't change the Torah. The Goyim changed. The Chefza of Goyim changed in this world. And that most people are not aware of. Like all of you, self-Perek Aleph of Tanya, right? But did you know the Alter Rebbe said that it's not a Chassidum U'Seilom? Self-Perek Aleph is not Chassidum U'Seilom. Chassidum U'Seilom are from Klippus Nega, not from Shalosh Klippus Nega. So most people, I say that, they don't even believe me. They say, yeah, that's your new Torah, you're a liberal, whatever. And I show them there's Mekedish. You have a Chelik Yud Gimel. Look in the Sikha, if you want to do your homework, look in the Kutei Sicha's Chelik Yud Gimel, page 230, all the Rebbe's are others there. You'll have a whole new look on Goyim after you read that. Most people are not even aware. I'm talking about Lomdim in our community. Because we don't go there. You know, Goyim is Veda Zora, and you have to, you know, we were waiting for them all to die, and so on. I mean, I honestly, that's how people think. Now, I understand why, because they've been massacring us for 2,000 years. And, you know, we're happy they're just not bothering us. But the Rebbe has a very different attitude. His attitude is we're going to have to transform them and teach them. How to do it is another discussion. But it's not even a shaila. To me, that's a major thing. Now, should that be your shlichus, each one of you going to the Goy Shul? Lavdafka, you know. But for example, myself as a writer, I wrote Torah Meaningful Life. I wrote it for non-Jews. I didn't write it for Jews only. I wrote it for the secular person, including non-Jews. Frankly, most Jews read what Goyim read. Most Jews are not from, so most Jews are reading books that have to be written like you're writing it for the whole world. So I deal with this directly. And some of you may be talented in that way, where you may be able to write or do other things and reach. And it's a major part of the Aveda. Very little, very, very little. I mean, I would challenge anyone to show me how much has been done in this regard. Shvacha meises. Almost nothing. And I think the Rebbe also saw the suggestions. I saw all the Rebbe's notes on this. The suggestions given to the Rebbe were all weird suggestion. I'll give you an example, not names. The answer the Rebbe said that something's nishtana was because someone came up with the idea to collect all the names of Jewish congressmen and senators and political leaders. And start with that. Get them all together and start Shem Mitzvahs through that. Once you get the Jews together. When the Rebbe heard that, he said, Mufrach legamri. Why? And he writes, because what are you doing then? You're going to create just resentment. Because they're going to, first of all the senators agree that Jews must come together because they're Jewish. And secondly, we're going to create resentment. Imagine it gets out to the news that the Jewish senators are all now planning how to bring God to the Christian world. So you see, the idea was the problem. I don't think that Shem Mitzvah is the problem. This idea, the Rebbe didn't say it was no. I'm not criticizing the person who came up with the idea. But this idea, the Rebbe was, that's when he said that it's going to create more anti-Semitism. So some people interpreted that the Rebbe is changing his position. I don't think so at all. I think the Rebbe wanted Goyim to do the mitzvah, and Jews should be behind the scenes. And I have a lot to say on this topic, but it's not for now. Huh?
How do you get that they want to go?
I see from all the answers from the Rebbe, and also makes sense. But when Jews are going to come out, the Christians are 2.5 billion Christians in the world. There are hundreds of millions of Christians in the United States. So you can suddenly come out, we're going to teach you what morality is. Doesn't that make any sense? It's very clear that Rebbe wanted it to be through the government, a moment of silence, get government officials to do it. Not that Jews are declaring to Goyim, that'll never fly. There's no way you can have such a campaign.
But is there such movements? Goyim want teaching Shabbat?
You have Noahide laws, you have the Noahide groups in Texas and some other places. It's not an Ephraim, it's a joke. It's small potatoes. I am trying to do some things in that regard. Can't say I've succeeded really, but to some extent, because when you write and you do, it's more. At the end of the day, it's moral messages. When the Rebbe says to increase in acts of goodness and kindness, and maybe one of you guys will go become a Meshuggah Le'esei Davar. If you can make a campaign out of increasing goodness and kindness, you can do tremendous, tremendous work. I would say it needs to be a grassroots campaign that is more moral messages and moral activity. I'll give you an example. Any of you have heard pay it forward? The idea of pay it forward? So you have to think pay back. I do you a favor, you pay me back. So a number of years ago, a guy wrote a book called Pay It Forward. Instead of you paying me back, you go do a favor to someone else. So instead of it being closed, it goes hemshech. Like tefech hamnas latvich. You understand what I'm saying? So if I did you a favor, don't pay me back the favor. Go pay someone else the favor. Go do it. The Rebbe's approach. This is a movement that began. It became a movie. And now it's a real movement. You go online, pay it forward. Millions of people are involved in this. I'm very taken. It has nothing to do with the Rebbe. Nothing to do with Siddur. But, for example, there are a lot of people where they have, these drive-by cafes, like you drive by and you buy a cafe from the window. You don't have to get out of your car.
Drive-through.
Huh?
Drive-through.
Drive-throughs. So they found, I saw an article from the New York Times a few months ago, where 550 cars each paid for the guy behind him. Like he said, when the guy comes up, I'm paying you now, whatever he says, put on my credit card. And it's a real stock of shalemus, because by the time the guy knows, you've already pulled away. And 550 cars went after the other did it. I mean, that's a tremendous, I know it's not changed the world, but it's a tremendous kav of chesed, of giving. Most people are selfish and just pay for me all the time. And here you're going to pay for others. So this cat caught on, pay it forward. Imagine having campaigns like that of different sorts, being creative. You can make major changes. I think that's more or less the Rebbe's approach. Because when he said increase in acts of goodness and kindness. Goodness and kindness. So getting people to be better people. Tzedek v'yesher, Another thing, most people think Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei is, they have 7, we have 613. Yeah. By the way, I always say this, that if every Jew kept the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei, we'd have the Geula. Because the Sheva Mitzvahs happen to be the Aseres HaDibros, chutz from Kibbutz, Aveim, and Shabbos. It's about God, about not to steal, not to rob, not sexual improprieties, not to kill. So if everyone kept it, so everyone makes the Sheva Mitzvah like, little a picture, like, it's not the case. It happens to be the foundations of civilization. Anyway, that's the Kud.
The Rebbe was saying that they have to do Shem Mitzvahs B'nai. They have to know it's because they used to get the terror by Har Sinai.
Yeah, the Rambam says that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So what's Pshat?
yeah. To know that that's based on the Eibishter. But it's not so difficult. Pshat. I spoke the Kinnis Torah. Every year after every Yom there's a Kinnis Torah in 7-7. So the first the Russian is a Chazorah from the Rebbe's Asich. So after Shavuos I spoke on the Shem Mitzvahs because the Rebbe was the status and Tavshim Gimmel was about Shem Mitzvahs. So the Rebbe said that. So I explained. United States, the Rebbe says in B'Shalach Tavshim Mem that the founding fathers had a Me'ein Ruach HaKedesh when they founded this country. The Rebbe says it. And then he says like this. This country, when you look into the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, it says all men are created equal, and endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. That's, in other words, it's not just apisech. It's geboit on Anoich Hashem Elokecha by Har Sinai. And in many letters that the Rebbe exchanges with the presidents of the United States, he says, they write that our country is based on the 10 Commandments given by God. Because morality without the Eibishter, we know, like the Nazis can go anyway. So that's part of the Yisod, because then it's unwavering. Then it's Yished Chazuk. If it says, Achot you and I make, so today we say you're equal, today we give you rights, tomorrow we don't. Yeah, listen, Ashgacha Prati, maybe from someone from this table is going to come out and do, I really think it's a major, major force. But you have to think like this. You have to think breit. It's a very big farnem. It's not a small thing. It's like thinking in terms of how do you impact people with, like I said, a pay it forward or other type of interesting coming. But it's a acts of goodness and kindness. I always think about it. If you had to make a list of acts of goodness and kindness, give me 10 examples, 10 exercises that every person should do every day in goodness and kindness. And get people motivated, It could be giving tzedakah, it could be volunteering. There's a lot of say a kind word to someone. I mean, it's something. But you have to care, and you have to feel that the Rebbe is talking to you, and you have to do something. I always say that the Rebbe said once by Fabrengen, more than once, that when he speaks of Fabrengen, it's not to thousands of people. He's speaking to each individual like they're in Yechidus with him. Now, most people think the Rebbe speaks, he means somebody else. But if imagine the Rebbe called you in Yechidus and said, if you get turned out, it's tut what du kennst. Would you be able to just ignore that? It's easy when saying, who am I, my kleine pisher, there's this mashpia and that godel and that godel and that, and there's all the other people, So you have to take it to heart personally that it's your aveda, your Indian. So you have your work cut out for you. Get to work. Sit down, make a strategy, and get to action.
That's a question.
Tonight, you don't have to wait till tomorrow. Huh?
When the Rebbe said like Dar Shavi, that where the generation of Gula, is that what does Dar Shavi mean? Is that a matter of year? Is that a matter of like?
Yeah, the kasha yudua, as they say. Yes, we've heard this question. We've had this question already for 25 years. I don't have an answer. I'll tell you what. I'll talk like Pesi Yamin L'chol Davar. Just the Tmim Dika answer. The Rebbe said it, and that's all that matters to me. And that's that. I don't have an answer. I can't explain it. I don't have these questions. As long as the Gula is not here, it's going to be the Dei Shvi. That's how I see it. You could say, it doesn't make sense to you. Fine. So not everything has to make sense. The Rebbe said, Imreiku mikemhu. You know what that means? If you don't have an answer, the problem is you, not. So if I had to choose whether I don't understand, or is the Rebbe right and I don't understand, or I understand the Rebbe is wrong, I'll tell you my choice. I have a soft spot for the Rebbe. So unfortunately, there are a lot of people who decided that they know better than the Rebbe. Or they decided that if the Rebbe was here, we'd have a different opinion. How do they have the achrayas to say that? I've been around, I've written sichos, I think I know a few things. I am pretty good, well versed in the Rebbe's talks. The Rebbe is a Rebbe. I told you before, it's Shmuel Munkes. I told this to people. Someone told me the other day, maybe the Rebbe changed his mind. Maybe he would change his mind now. Maybe there was a Ishotza for the Gula, and now the Rebbe wouldn't be speaking about the Gula. So I said, first of all, it's a big maybe. How do you know? So am I going to trust your maybe over maybe you're wrong. Number one. Number two, I said, I know you. That if the Rebbe told you that the doctor is saying you should make an operation on your child, or else the child's going to die, and the Rebbe says, do not make an operation, what would you do? He said, I wouldn't make the operation. So I said, so you're telling me, life and death, shchina medaberes meter grene. But when it comes to Deir HaShvi or other things, it's not shchina medaberes meter grene. What are you talking about? So the Rebbe says, he says, maybe we didn't understand. I said, maybe we did understand, maybe you don't. I have a kasha. The Rebbe said a number of times, if we're already finished the Aveda, why is Moshiach Taka not here? You know what the Rebbe's answer was? Ich hab Taka kasha. Ich weiß Taka nicht. So if the Rebbe could say it, I could definitely say it. So I don't have answers to everything, but the question is not about whether, it's not like we can't talk intelligently. I'm not talking like a fool here. But it doesn't mean I have to have an answer to everything for it to be emes. You understand? I also have a nice Yetzer Hara, trust me. And, someone told me the other day, you believe everything you say? I said, my Nefesh Elikiz does, my Nefesh Abamis doesn't. The Feder Shetanya. What's the problem with that? I'm at peace with that. My Nefesh Elikiz believes, and my Nefesh Abamis has its issues, because it's a behemoth. So what do you want? I mean, I'm ready to admit that. It's not a problem. I mean, it's a problem, but I mean to say, that's how the Eibishter made us. The Alter Rebbe says, don't make a big fuss. It's a mochama, and that's it. What's it done with a Yetzer Hara? Whatever it is. But just the Rebbe's emes. You see, that's a little difference here. That's what I don't like. Someone takes their Nefesh Abamis and they decide to say, you know what, it's not convenient for me, so I'm going to fit the Rebbe into a new model. That is, to me, false. Say you have a Nefesh Abam, I got no problem. You could go sin as much as you want. But don't make it that the Rebbe gave you a bracha for it, and the Rebbe would agree with you. That's not... I remember once by Fabrein, the Rebbe said, I don't remember when it was. If any of you ever find it, I'd like to find it. I can't find the source. The Rebbe said, everybody has cheseinos, but don't make a philosophy out of them. You have cheseinos, we all have cheseinos. Once you make a philosophy, then it becomes a whole philosophy. Now you have to start arguing with a philosophy that's based on what? On your own negiyas and sheikhet, Think about it. It's a very powerful word. Listen, we all have our weaknesses and so on, no one argues, but don't make a whole philosophy, a shit out of it. The Rebbe, I am a live witness. I was a chazer, maybe I'm still a chazer. I heard too many times from the Rebbe, hundreds of times, that we already finished the bidurim, that the gula is just a matter of time, it's just a matter of opening our eyes. You can't change those words. And I'm not talking now how some Meshugoyim interpret it. That's outside of the Rebbe's words. I see people, for example, tell me, you can only learn the sichos till Tov Shinun. And after that, which in Hutchin Heiros from somewhere in the Midwest, that we versteht nicht the sichos nach Tov Shinun. Versteht? That's it. And then some people tell me, you can only learn the sichos after Tov Shinun, because everything before is a Shtana Yitim, it's a Nut Kufa, Geula. Both are Shtusim Gmurim, Leiseisu v'Leisigre. Every word the Rebbe said from Tov Shin Yud till Tov Shinun Beis is Kedusha, Teira Mesinai, Dvar Hashem, and that's that. You don't understand it, so you suddenly decide what you don't understand. I said, okay, with that attitude, you might as well say, I don't understand a pasuk in the Teira, and let's cut it out. What kind of attitude is that? I'm very big kanoi when it comes to this. Not a kanoi. I'm not the frumster guy, but I'm a kanoi. I cannot stand someone tampering with the integrity of a message. The Rebbe said that. You don't like it? So say you don't like it, and then follow your Yetzer Hara. What are you trying to change the Rebbe's words to fit your agenda? I can't, by me, how could anybody in their life say that there's sikhs that we're not supposed to learn because we don't understand them? What kind of chutzpah is to say such a thing? That would be, someone's going to say, we're not going to learn certain parakim in Tanya because we can't understand it. Who learned it? You could say, I don't get it yet, so I'm not up to learning it, but to say, who has the right to say such a thing? And I've heard it from Mashpim, and I've heard it from so-called Choshev people. So one thing, as long as I breathe, I will make machal when it comes to things like that. That to me is absolutely unacceptable. And the same thing the other way around. What do you mean? Only sikhs after Tov Shinun? What are you talking about? The sikhs of Tov Shinun are built on Tov Shemem. It's one big Torah. It's like learning the Rambam. You're going to learn. The Rambam relies on what he said earlier. You can't just learn a piece of Rambam. It's the whole Rambam. And to me, this is so posh, I don't even know why I have to say it, but I'm saying it because you may hear from some chachamim who decided. I was once by Fabrein, I remember. I'm not going to say names. He's already in Elam Amis. He's a shliach, but not just the biggest, wisest guy on earth. Let's put it this way. And he says, in the middle of Fabrenga, I don't know why I was there even, maybe just to give it to him over his head. So he suddenly says, he was an older shliach, respected. He says, I don't feel even uncomfortable to repeat what he said, but I'll say it. He said, Be'emes, what did he say? What was the word he used? The siluk. Be'emes had the siluk sich schon angeheben in Tovshin Memches. That's what he decided. I heard that, I'm almost like I couldn't believe he'd spoken to Bochrim. So I said to him, let me ask you something. Welche siluk? Siluk from Tzimtzum or Rishon? Welche siluk? First of all, we know this in siluk is this Tzimtzum Kipshute, that's number one. Welche siluk? He says, oh, heb some daskol. I said, welche siluk? I said, if that's the case, what's happens Memches? Maybe Lamed Ches. When the Rebbe had a heart attack. And maybe not Chav Daled when the Rebbe also had a heart attack. Every 14 years there was something by the Rebbe. So I said, what's that? He said, Chas v'sholem. He tells me, Chas v'sholem. I couldn't believe it. I said, Chas v'sholem, dus machen gwen, bis Memches is ein Rebbe. And then after Memches, you can't take the Rebbe seriously because there's a siluk. What's kind of shtusim gemurim, kfira gemurah here? Anyway, I started yelling at him. No, I wasn't I wasn't that upset as I made me believe I was upset. Because I should have been. But I couldn't believe a person is saying that. I said, I have no problem, I told him, if you become a ishliach, and schneid up the board, and zay mesnagid, and you don't believe in the Rebbe. Period. That I have easier to understand than a guy sitting here and telling me that the Rebbe is Kedesh Kadoshim till Memches. And then we can't understand. He didn't say siluk. I understood what he meant. We all understand what he meant. Siluk means the Rebbe started removing himself. And I never heard such cases from a Rebbe. The Rebbe says, remember what the Rebbe said by Hey Tevis? As they will machen noch a levaya, and they sagen, jede Jahr von Yutzvat is weiter. And the Rebbe says the exact opposite. Someone to say that there's a siluk. Let's not. Anyway. I felt I just had to say this just in case over this next weekend here, Gimmel Tammuz evokes sometimes people's sentiment that sound a little like what I'm negating here. It's first of all, it's Amaratzis. They don't understand B'chal what a Rebbe or Chassidus is. I understand in Nisayan. They don't see the Rebbe 24 years, 22 years, whatever it is, and it's Nisayan. Fine, no problem. It's Nisayan. I'm not saying it's not a difficult time, but you can't start tampering with MS because you have a difficult time. You know. The next thing is what the Jews also made a cheshbon. The Moshe was supposed to come down. They built Eigel Azov because they had their own cheshbonos. Look, in the last two parshas, Gimmel Tammuz always comes Shlach Kerach, right? Two parshas, Mamash about his kashrus and the lack of it. The Meraglim were Shluchim, Shlach Lacha. And their mistake was they started deciding the Shlichus is not for me, it's too difficult. So they didn't challenge Moshe, but they challenged Moshe's Shlichus. And Kerach challenged Moshe directly. Abachal v'edaf my Rebbe. Tell me, isn't Hazrocha Pratis interesting? Kerach and Chukah, Shlach and Kerach, Mamish Gimmel Tammuz. Because that's the challenge we have today. Some people say, maybe the Shlichus is different, it's too difficult, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's Shinuyim. And the second group say, who says there's a Rebbe anymore? The Rebbe is gone. So you have your heroes from the two parshas.
I had another question. We know that before Moshiach comes, we call it Gog and Magog,
Okay,
right?
we're going to wind it up, 9:04 already. Yeah, what?
Before Moshiach comes, there's supposed to be a war by the...
Gog and Magog.
Yeah.
So the Rebbe said already a number of times that this war was already fought the Second World War or previously, and now it's going to be peaceful. There will not be any more wars. The Rebbe says, beferish.
But Gog and Magog is a war where all of the people who gave faith to Am Yisrael, Hashem will make them suffer.
So
Will
the
have
Rebbe
that.
says those wars are not going to be anymore.
But there are people that are making Am Yisrael suffer now. So what about that?
Like who, the Arabs, you mean?
Yeah, I'm saying.
So first of all, it's not all the Arabs, it's just a number.
Whatever it is.
And in a Hanami, you have to fight the war with them and do whatever it takes to get rid of them.
So Gog and Magog is over or is not?
The Rebbe says Gog and Magog is over, says a number of times. That doesn't mean there aren't some things we still have to clean up. But Gog and Magog means that most of the world is not against the Jews today. Most of the world is friendly to Jews. It's only small pockets now. That's the Rebbe's approach.
So we're saying now there's gonna be like the mini Goyim, like in other words.
No, those that still are fighting with Jews will hopefully do what have to do with them. But it's the majority that look at the United States has been a Malchus Shel Chesed for Jews. The former Soviet Union is a Malchus Shel Chesed for Jews. Even in European countries, though there's some I didn't say there are no anti-Semites, but generally speaking, countries of the world, from the Rebbe's point of view, are now in a gather of Malchus Shel Chesed and good for Jews. That's the Rebbe's says at many sikhs. And the ones that remain, you don't take it for granted something. There was a time when there was no country that was safe for us. We were expelled from every country or killed or so on. Besides the Holocaust, before that. It's only essentially since the Rebbe became Rebbe, after World War II, that Jews have, for the first time, freedom in almost every country. That's why we have shluchim in every country. The only countries that you could say we don't have is maybe North Korea.
Dubai.
Huh? What?
Dubai.
Where?
Dubai.
Where's that?
That's
In Africa?
Arab Emirates.
Okay, Dubai, I said. Okay, yeah. But, so, as I said, there's still room to do, but from the Rebbe point of view, it looks like
What happened, like,
Huh?
those many people that were retired, all like Hashem gave them their.
Well, they're not around anymore. They were killed. The Nazis are gone. The Tzedek Yisrael are killed. They're all killed. They don't have many left. You have, as I said, some pockets, and fine. But
everyone, when it comes to the day that they're supposed to die, they die. And also, these people have to have a special thing.
the Rebbe's opinion is that we can go into the Gula now. We're ready for the Gula. We just have to do our part to finish the job. What are you asking exactly?
I'm saying the people that were like.
The people of Mitzrayim are long dead. I'm telling you, you can't kill someone that's dead, right? The Nazis are dead.
Okay, so what's the difference between them and someone who didn't kill Jews? There's no difference. Because everyone came.
Here, we live in a country here, the United States, Argentina. You're living in peace there? There's millions of goyim. They're not killing Jews, are they? They're not rounding up Jews. So why would you want to kill them?
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking is what's the difference between them and other goyim? I'm saying.
Which other? Give me an example. Which goyim?
A Nazi that killed.
There's no Nazis, but the Nazis are gone.
They're supposed to be killed. That's
So they were killed.
the war. It's the Holocaust. Kilo was the
No, but I'm saying Hashem promises that every single person that was sorry are going to get punished.
And they were all punished. As I said, they were all gone. You have no Tzedek Yisrael left. Haman is gone. Pari is gone. The Nazis are gone. The Bolsheviks are gone. All the people that did this to Jews are no longer here. So what's Taka fulfilled? Why are you unhappy about that?
What I'm saying is the Nazi that died in his 90, for example, right? And he killed, for example, he killed
Who?
a Nazi. He killed I know, but Doug White was supposed to be.
So you want to bring him back and kill him? That's what you want to do? He's gone. That's it. Who cares how he's gone? He's gone. Okay, my friends, that's the Simon B'Taves. We have to spread good. The good will take care of the rest. And we should be zeichet to be with the Rebbe before Gimmel Tammuz. That's the time. And Eid Chazen Lameid, you could always, now we became friends, we could always access me if you like. It's easy to reach. If you have any questions, you could just send them in anonymously.
How do we get the emails?
Like this.
Maybe.
Huh?
Yeah, you have the emails.
Which emails?
You said that you sent an email.
Oh,
us
if you
every
send
week.
me, can you gather everybody's email address and just send it to me? That's the
Yeah,
best
I'm
way.
sure it'd be a good idea.
Can you do that?
Yeah.
So,
you know
so
his
we
email?
one guy
He
just
wrote it
take-
to me.
Huh?
I wrote down your email.
Yeah, so send me everybody's email,
No problem.
whoever gives you, and I'll be happy to send stuff out. I write a lot about these things. And should you have questions, there's always this anonymous form. You can write anything you like. People write things, called over Osif. And we don't have no idea who you are because it's a form. It's not a, you know.
Can I put my name also?
What?
Can I put my name also?
Absolutely, absolutely. I do Sunday night. I try to answer questions. I deal with a lot of Baruch Shemaisis and also issues, whatever. All the topics under the sun. Yeah. So you'll gather, you'll send me, please.
Yeah.
Guys, give him your email address, and he'll send me your email address, and I'll make sure to get everything.